All right, so let's do this. Orion, if you're good, we can probably go ahead and get started here. Just want to give me a thumbs up. All right, cool. Let me switch over here, and you can go ahead and unmute, and we can rock and roll. So,
Hold on.
what's up, man? How we doing?
We are doing. We cannot complain at this point in time.
Well, that's a good
I mean,
thing.
we could, but it's not going to matter anyway if we can play.
Right? What's it going to accomplish, right?
Not much, other than probably just making you feel a bit better for a very short period of time.
Yep. All right, so let's kick this thing off. Tell us who you are, what you do at Standing Stone, and anything else you'd like to just say off the rip.
So I'm Orion, Alan Mackey. I'm the lead designer on Lord of the Rings Online. That is what I do. So that's what I've been doing for a little while now.
All right.
There's really not much more than that. I mean, that's kind of what it is, right?
Well, I think that'll just make us jump right into the first real question then, which
Sure.
is, what is the day in the life like for a lead systems designer for an MMO?
So it's funny, right? Because I started off in content ages ago on Asheron's Call. I'm going in the Wayback Machine for a little bit here. So I started off as a content designer there, moved all the way up to lead content design on that team, and then eventually moved over to DDO for a period of time where I did all of the wander spaces and everything there. So the initial raid pieces that were in DDO, that was a lot of the stuff that I did with my my colleague on that. And then I moved over to LOTRO, where I ended up being the co-content lead. I did that for 3 to 4 years, and then moved over to the system side, where I got to redo the Minstrel, redo the Warden, and then I started working on a super top secret thing that we were building that is actually still in the game, and I found that out when I came back. That was all PvP based. So that is still out there and something that I was working on. And when that got wrapped up, I got dragged right back in at the end of Mounted Combat.
Okay.
Which any of the Mounted Combat skills is because of me. And it's really because when we were building Mounted Combat, no one really thought about how players were going to fight on mounts at the start. So about 9-10 weeks before we got the first build out there, I was like, so who's doing all the work to make fighting on horseback work with our different classes? And the person who was working on it looked at me and said, "Oh yeah, we need to do that." And I was like,
I gotta get started.
"Okay, I'll get right on that." So we had to pare that down and everything. And there's, that's one thing that I still look back at, and I'm just like, oh man, I really wish we had never added it to the game. I know that some players may like it, but on the whole, boy, was it a complete departure from the way the game actually functioned, and it took an awful lot of extra effort to get in. Yeah, but at the launch of LOTRO, I started off as content, but I did a lot of the system-y type things that were there. I was one of the co-authors of the Monster Play experience and everything. I ended up doing that for the majority of the time that I was on the team.
Yeah.
And then I got moved over to a different game, and I then suffered at the hands of the WB layoff that happened. God, that was 9 years ago now, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And went to work in corporate America for a while, and then came back. And when I came back, it was great because I'm back on the systems team and I'm getting involved in everything again. And I got to start reworking a lot of the different things that I wanted to do when I was initially on the team. So what do I do on a daily basis? I'm going a really long way to explain this, right? But
That's all
on
right.
a daily basis, I'm trying to architect a whole bunch of new systems that we can inject into the game to both provide longevity and more entertainment value for our players. Identifying a lot of the different pieces that are lackluster or need to be revised, revamped, overhauled, sometimes just thrown into the hopper and looked at and said, maybe this isn't working the way that we want it to. And there are some things that just will never see the light of day, and there's a whole bunch of ideas that just get bandied about. More recently, I've gone back to straddling both teams, so I'm actually working with the content side and working with the system side. As we approach the end of last year, I actually had to put my content back on, and I ended up doing a pretty large portion of the content that went into the expansion pack as a result. And then obviously I did some of the instance work that was just released with update 39. Okay. So on a daily basis, no, it's actually weird. It's very busy. Like the first thing I do every morning is check to see what we have for any blockers, criticals, or mages that needs to get sent out to the different parties and make sure that we're actually fixing those. That's like priority 1. And then priority 2 is I start fixing my own bugs. We don't really have any bugs.
No, nothing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Right.
No, it's. I mean, it is. It's a job. So you're always working, and you're always trying to come up with new things, and you're always trying to inspire those around you. But as long as I've been in the industry now, it's more about empowering the younger team members who are really starting to be the up and comers. Like OnMM is fantastic, Myth is fantastic. We've got a new crop of content folks that are coming online that I'm sure they will want to introduce themselves at some point in the future. So I'll have to mentor them in how to do things like this and how to interact with the players. It's great though, because I don't have to be the one that carries a lot of the stuff that I used to. So it's a fun time to be back and working on the game.
Excellent.
A really fun time to be back and working on the game.
All right. Well, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned mounted combat, in which you kind of never made it into the game. Actually, kind of brings up the next thing here, which is what's something that you really wanted to get into the game, and now that I know a little bit more of the content background, whether it be systems or content that you really wanted to get in the game but just hasn't been able to make it in.
So let me frame this the right way.
Okay.
We're a small team, right? We're not some large AAA studios, so we're fairly small. We have to make decisions that are both immediate and long term. We don't have the luxury of taking a big swing and end up having that be a horrible miss. So it's harder to swing for the fences, right? I'm going to throw baseball analogies at you because, hey, the season just started.
Go
so
Reds.
we can't no, well, I can't really say go Red Sox because they're the Red Sox now. So we can't really continuously swing for the fences, so we have to be a little bit smarter about the way that we do things. So we really want to kind of string together a bunch of singles. At this point, the past 6 months have been a little bit rocky for us. We started to turn the corner. I think things are actually back to where they need to be.
Okay.
I spent probably the last 3 or 4 months, aside from working on the raid and getting everything set up for that, really setting the plan for the next 3 to 5 years. Right. So there's a plan now that's in place and how we're trying to get back on an actual production track that makes sense. So the overall goal that we released this year with the roadmap at the outset of the year is to actually get us to a position where we can have a more consistent delivery to you, the players, and get you used to the cadence and also get us used to the cadence. Because the past couple of years, at least since I've been back and after Renina left, was a little bit haphazard. There wasn't as much that was like clear directionally that we really wanted to accomplish. So we're trying to get back to a lot of those fundamental pieces. And string together, like I said, a few of the hits. So it's a process now of the way I'm looking at it is building blocks, things that we're trying to do to actually build toward bigger, best end goals. So there's one thing that I really want to get in that I can't really say anything about yet because it would be such a change that I don't want any other game taking it. Right?
Oh.
So
dang.
Monster Play was the thing.
Yeah.
Right. When Monster Play came out, one other game had really done it. That was EverQuest. And now that that Dark Paw is part of the same group that we're all part of, it's interesting to see how when the initial version of Monster Play went in, when we were developing our Monster Play, it was originally set up to be a coin-op experience, where you would go in, play for a short period of time, you'd earn some Destiny points, which were the original points that we had inside of the game, and that would continue to fuel your ability to advance faster, play the game the way that you wanted to, and also jump back into Monster Play whenever you wanted to. I looked at that and I said, if you look at what EverQuest is doing right now, it is a crap fest with the way that players are actually abusing it, because they're just waiting for people to hop in as their monsters, and then they're just jacking them and ruin that entire experience for those who are actually trying to have fun as a monster for a short period of time. I said, let's not do that. Let's actually turn this into something that's a little bit more viable. Well, we put the longevity aspect in it, and it did a lot better than we expected. I don't think any of us ever really expected that Monster Play would be as successful as it was. So I'm not a stranger to doing things that are a little bit away from the norm and at the forefront of something new. I really want to do something new inside of our space. And what I can allude to is we are a traditional MMO in the case that we continue to put out stuff for people who are at the top end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Our early part of the game and that run up to the 150 levels that we have is long.
Yeah.
And as we look at our player base and we look at where our player base is actually spread out, I think you actually brought this up with Sev during your interview with him at the end of last year. We have a lot of players that don't ever reach cap.
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
And but those players are looking to do one thing, and that's live in Middle Earth. And we've done, I think, a very good job of providing the experience of being in Middle Earth. Being in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So the live part is the step that that I really want to kind of look toward in the future. So that's my long-term goal. Whether or not it's something that's achievable, we'll see. We have to take those little steps along the way. We have to actually make the small advancements and figure out whether or not things are actually trending the way that we want to in order to continue that. Because, like I said, we can't just swing for the fences. We can't miss big, because if we put all those eggs into one basket and it fails, then maybe there's no more game to play. So we have to be careful and cautious about the things that we're doing. That's my big hint. That's it's a long-term goal, and if we get there, it would be very different, at least inside of an MMO.
Okay, all right then. So this next one we'll touch on here is kind of at a broad brushstrokes type of deal. Here is when you're looking at stuff, especially being a lead, like how do you decide what's something that needs to be fixed, whether it needs to be pushed back, or sometimes even getting rid of something altogether? How do you guys work through that?
So a lot of it starts with just the perception and the experience that the players have with a different system or a different piece of content. There are things that I mean, I look at from my tenure early on the game that I wish we had never done, or decisions that were made for reasons that were legitimate at the time.
Mm-hmm, sure.
That in hindsight, you just kind of go, wow, we probably shouldn't have done things that way, because they kind of painted us into a corner that is very difficult to get out of. Players, and I'm talking to all of you now, right?
Yeah.
There are two things that are very consistent from the player base. One is the grind, which is legitimate. Like, the grind is real. We know that. Virtues and Li are both really deep systems, and unfortunately, they're both very vertical. There's nothing that really spreads them out. It's all very much the same thing, even with our trade system. And things that we've been discussing recently are centered around how do we start making the game a little broader, but also at the same time not alienating the player base that wouldn't care too much about things being more broad, right? Because we have LOTRO is a very strange game in that if you throw a rock, you're going to hit a different kind of player every single time you throw that rock. You might hit a player who is super casual one time, and then you might hit a high-end raider that is just out there at the same, next throw. So it's very weird to be able to accommodate and reach all of those different player bases at once. So we have to really try to be shifting the entire time. And like one of the things that comes up a lot from the player base is, hey, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to go around Moria and not have to do the 50 to 60 slog through Moria anymore? And then, we'll talk to Sev, and Sev might be like, yeah, but is that really going to do anything for us? And there's a lot that goes into that. But I'm getting off track with the actual question because I just like talking. So things that need to be fixed. There's a lot that really needs to be fixed. When we actually sit down and we start looking at some of the difficulties, some of the slow points, the biggest ones are probably the super grindy systems that we know can be adjusted somewhat and turned into things that are a little bit less grindy, but don't detract from the overall engagement of the game. So for that, we look at how can we make improvements to, say, the Virtue system? How can we make improvements to the Allies system? What were some of the changes that we made during the early development of those systems that maybe we should go back and revisit? The LI system is one of those that me and Vastin talk about a lot, and onto we all recognize that it's a necessary system for the game that we have, and to try to keep people kind of engaged with it. But at the same time, it grows very stale because we don't really inject enough into it in the terms of variety. And what we're hoping we can do is find ways to make that broader. For those players who actually want things to be broader. So I think along those lines, it's a matter of figuring out how we work that into an already busy schedule that we have, and determining when those expansions and when those points to spread that out can actually begin. A lot of that stuff ends up getting pushed back just because of other demands that get thrown at us, or shifts that in the actual things that happen in real time that we have to make adjustments for. So we have to remain, it's terrible to throw words like this around, but we have to remain agile, and we have to remain reactive, so we can actually do the things that we're looking for. And there's a question in chat about, do we develop an agile or Kanban? So when I went back to corporate America, I actually got certified in agile. No, we don't really do agile. We actually operate in what I like to term fragile, because it is very, very fragile in the way that we do it. So it'd be great if we could function in 2-week sprints. It'd be fantastic. Our engineers tend to do that. It's much easier for an engineer to do that than it is for someone who's truly creative. When I was working in corporate America, I was actually project managing the UX part of design in a huge corp. And for that, I had to figure out how to keep the creatives moving forward at the same time that the engineers were. And this company did not work in Agile at all. So I was actually part of their Agile transformation, which was insane when you think about a super large corporation that's still working in Waterfall in the year 2010-ish. So that was pretty nuts. But we at SSG, we operate in kind of a pseudo. It's an adjusted Agile, I guess is the best way to put it. It works for us. We keep things moving forward, and we're starting to slide a little bit closer and closer to Agile as time goes on, because it's just a better way to work. The iteration on, being able to see what you're building, test it, give feedback on it is a much better loop for the design process than we've actually been doing for quite some time in the past. Getting back to the question, though, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
The overall goal of things that we look at is, what is this really contributing to the game, or has it become a detriment? So I'm going to look at mounted combat. I'll just throw that out there.
Okay.
It is the easiest thing for me to beat on, because it is one of the few things inside of the game that is detrimental to performance. It was detrimental to development, and the bang for the buck was not really there. It actually created a lot of difficulty and a lot of future design in the way that it was actually implemented. So we actually put this on the board when I came back in 2022. So it was on the board when I got back, and I was like, can't we just get rid of it? Because there's just so much, I have so much animosity toward the system.
You're not alone.
It's not the kind of thing that we can easily excise from the game, because it's built into so much of what is kind of core to the Rohan experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go back and look at Rohan and I'll say, all right, well, what about big battles? And that's another one that is kind of like a really big slog, right?
Yeah.
Now, the content team, and I wasn't on the team at this time, right? But the content team actually looked at that and said, hey, we should really find a way to work around that. And they did. They came up with good workarounds that now players can actually avoid having to go through a lot of the big battle system.
Right.
Because
Yep.
the big battle system, it was great probably for when it was initially implemented, but it never really was something that was going to be extensible. It wasn't something that we were going to be able to continue pushing forward and maintain as we pushed through development over time, because we knew that we were not going to be as large a team as we moved on. So again, like a lot of the newer systems that we're looking at, that we're trying to bring online, and the things that we're trying to do as we move forward is, what's the extensibility? What's the upkeep on these things? What can we do that will actually make sense? So we have to take a look at each of those one by one and determine what can and can't be done to either improve, reduce, refactor, rebuild, and sometimes maybe even cut a system. We're probably not going to cut mounted combat, because getting rid of it would be really difficult, and some players really like the mounts that give them that little bit of extra speed. We have definitely talked about ways that we could improve it. We've definitely talked about, is there a way that we can actually just take into the existing mounted system, so just mounts in general, and modify those and turn those into something where they are, you can just fight from horseback. And that's the one that we might look at in the future as something that is viable.
Yeah.
Right. It is like this is something that would be fairly easy for us to do. We could probably get some of the blend animations to work correctly. It's just a matter of finding the time and finding the it's really the time, right? It's really finding the time to actually fit it into the schedule while we're still trying to put out new things over and over again.
Well, you say that, and I can already just picture somebody riding around on a hobby horse throwing fireballs.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't happen, right? Not everything would be usable, but yeah, no, but that's the thing, right? I'll like Sev comes to us all the time. He's like, "Can we put flying mounts in the game? Can we put?" I'm like, "No,
no.
The Eagles are not a taxi service. We can't do that. Like, that's never gonna happen. Like the lore aspect of it is just, it's written in stone. You're not gonna get a flying mount. No. But could we take the existing mounts and make them move as fast as war steeds? That's possible, right? That's something that is not beyond the realm of possibility. It's then you have to go back and say, well, what is the impact if we allowed people to start doing this? What's the impact to the rest of the game? What's the impact to the mounted combat experience? Is there something that we now have to look at and say we have to go back and revisit all the content that was built in Rohan to accommodate for that? And when we start looking at things that way, the question then becomes, well, would it be easier and more cost efficient to just build an experience that gets you from 65 to 75 band that doesn't require you to hop on a mount to do the majority of it? And again, like when mounted combat was being developed, it was, I don't want to say it wasn't developed in a silo. It was developed with a very clear vision from the lead at the time, who knew exactly what they wanted, right? And I want this to feel like you're riding a horse. I want you to feel the momentum of the actual steed when you're on it. I want it to feel heavy when you're actually trying to turn. Does it translate, right?
Yeah.
And there are games that do it really well. Like Mountain Blade is a game that does it really well. But the game is built around that, right? So it wasn't something that we had to build into an existing game. It was something that actually was built on an engine that supported it, that actually had the physics that were involved, that didn't have to fake the physics that were involved. And when we did it, you know, it was just more difficult. And I'm not ashamed to say that I worked on that, because I did, and it was, at the time, it was something very unique, something very new, and you know, I'm proud of the work that I did on it. But from the play experience, when I played it, it just felt clunky, and it never really got much better. And I was very happy when, you know, the 75 band got pushed beyond it, and I didn't have to be on my war steed anymore to go out and find the roving bands and actually fight things from horseback, because it was really sad that I could only scream at things, even though LOTRO is full of a lot of screaminess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I do love the screaming.
Yes, there's a lot of screaming.
There is indeed.
But yeah, so it's always like a balancing act of what's the benefit of keeping this? What's the negative of losing it? What's the negative of keeping it? So that's kind of what we do. We weigh it out, and then we do have plans. Like LI is another one of the things that we look at, and we do want to expand it. It's the demands that we have in our team size make things a little bit more difficult. So we have to figure out how to weave that in a time frame that makes sense, and a way that actually makes sense for us and for players. And frankly, sometimes things just end up getting lost because of timing.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could print time. I print time over money every day of the week.
Yep. No, I totally get that one. Like you hit the nail on the head with a lot of those systems. Those are a lot of the ones I've been critical on over the years, and I know neither of us are alone in that regard. But to your point, you know, they seemed appropriate at the time. Like even from the player's perspective, like, you know, I do remember the first time being outside of Snowborn and hitting one of the war bands out there, and the first time it caught me, like, what are we really doing here? And it was just, there's 30 people riding around in a circle around this thing. I'm like, this isn't fun. So,
right.
You know, and that's kind of where it hit. And, you know, it was when it was new and fresh, like you're right outside of Harwick and you get it and you learn it. And I was like, all right, this is awesome. And then it never really went anywhere. And then I can't remember the one instance that actually had mounted combat in it that everybody kind of cheesed and went past to make them all dismount. Because like, no, please don't do this again. But no, I understand that.
Yeah, a lot of it was just the server based portion of the architecture that we needed to revise to support it, and the spaces. I mean, we couldn't get away with the same size of the actual landscape.
Right.
So there's just vast swaths of nothing, right? It makes you feel like you're riding through the moors of Rohan as you're doing it, which, if you're looking for the experience, probably makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for the gameplay aspect of it, well, you know, the roving warbands that you might run into that, like you said, like the whole circle effect of we're just swirling down the bowl at this point, just makes things a little bit less fun than they really should be.
Right. So we'll kind of move on from, you know, older systems and things like that, and we'll bring it up to something a little bit more recent for you. So as far as update 39 goes, how do you think the reception has been so far to the update as a whole, and more specifically into group content?
So I mean, I think it's been fair. I don't think it's been great. I don't think it's been terrible.
Okay.
The goal was not to really challenge the high-end raider on this. And what I'm seeing, at least from what I've been seeing on streams and what I've actually been seeing from the different Discords that I visit and things like that, and even in-game, is that we didn't really satisfy the hardcore raid crowd with the raid. The instances are short, because they are a little bit shorter. but everybody seems to be enjoying something. If it's Vastin's work, which is the Isle of the Isle, is great. Like, that's fantastic. Playing through it, it probably was the one that was probably the most complete as we came down toward that finish line. Streets is just, it's shorter. It went through a few revisions and got to a point where it is now. It's quick, and it was meant to be much easier anyway. So it wasn't something that it's the one that we kind of expected was going to be the least favorite of all of them. The arena and the raid, you can blame me for them both.
Dang, you're just taking that one right to the chin, man.
Oh, I'll take it right in the chin. I'm not afraid to admit my successes and my mistakes, right? Or, my failures or my successes. I don't think I failed on the raid. I think the raid is actually pretty good. I'm not saying it's the greatest. It's entertaining, folks. The last fight is a little long for some people. It's weird. We're getting like these weird disparities in timing on them. Mm-hmm. Where some folks, it seems like it's taking about 40 minutes to get through the tier 3 version of it, and yet there's others who are doing it in 20. So I don't know yet where the balance point is between those two, and I think it's going to take probably another month for a lot of that to shake out. And by the time that tier 4 and tier 5 roll around, I'm worried about tier 5 now, because tier 5 there are some punishing mechanics that get introduced in tier 5. So I'm really kind of concerned about the way the tier 5 and the raid is going to go. Tier 4, there is a couple of new punishing mechanics that are in there too that I'm a little hesitant on, but at the same time, I think they're okay with the way that they've actually been introduced and the way they will be introduced. There are some features that we would really, really, really like to get into the game to make things better for just the players in general. Like, one of the things that we don't have a lot of control over because the game engine is just so old at this point is the way that we telegraph a lot of attacks, or the way that we telegraph a lot of the special effects that are going to be happening. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty pleased with some of the way that I was able to get the telegraphed of one of the bigger mechanics is added into the tier 4 version of the raid, at least in the last fight. So I'm kind of hoping that goes over pretty well. We had a bug on our private test server where the actual effect was still going on after you defeated the final boss, which was kind of embarrassing because you could just get wiped out by it accidentally. So I had to fix that. It was pretty fun seeing folks go through that. But overall, I think that it's fair. I think it's probably, if I'm giving it a number, it's probably mixed. So we'll call it like a 70 to 78.
Okay.
Metacritic.
You go with the Metacritic.
So I think I'm pleased with where it ended up, given like the circumstances that we were in and how we had to kind of buckle down and make it go. I mean, the very fact that I was working on it, Vastin was working on it, On was working on it. When you think about the folks that are working on it, then it should be pretty clear that there were some fundamental things that were going on that we needed to make adjustments for, and we did. And now we're on a much better track. And U40 is actually going to be very exciting, I think, personally.
All right. Well, I actually see the question in chat, and it's actually...
I do too. I see a lot of them. They're all rolling through.
And it's actually what's kind of next up here is, where do we sit with the tier system? 1 through 5 versus just having 1 tier versus 1, 2, and 2 challenge. My personal favorite was tier 1, 2, and tier 2 challenge. That was perfect. That was perfection.
Yeah. So I made the mistake of opening this discussion up to the Palantir folks, which is our private test stuff. And the discussion there, again, the whole don't swing for the fences all the time thing, it also exists for any time you want to make a change. I would love to cut back to the 3-tier system. I would love to cut back to a point where we could adopt some of the more modern mechanics that other games are using for the instant spaces, where we could just outright steal the henchman system from DDO and drop it into LOTRO so you could hire henchmen to bring in with you, or maybe use our skirmish soldiers to actually embolden you and your crew to actually go into an instance space and have them function correctly. Because I think that would be beneficial for a lot of our players, and I think that it would actually make that experience better for some folks. Not everyone, but to me, 3 tiers is good. There's a hesitancy, I think, just from the team at large to make the change from tier 5 down to tier 3 because players have become very accustomed to the 5 different tiers that exist. I would really love for us to have, like an additional difficulty set on top of like a 3-tier system. I don't want to say to be exactly like Delvings, because it wouldn't be. Delvings are a completely different beast and a completely different monster that we can discuss at some other time. That would actually increase the challenge in a different way. I can't lie. It's hard to come up. It's not hard to come up with the mechanics for those things. It's hard to get the actual implementation of those things done in a way that seems fair and consistent to the different groups. And I think what ends up happening is the tier 3 becomes the real challenge, and then the tier 4 becomes the sweaty group, and the tier 5 is just we're really secretly secretly masochistic in the way that we approach things, and we actually like the pain of trying to figure this stuff out and just putting ourselves through this over and over again just so we can be like, that's my name up there.
Yeah.
And I think changing that direction at this point would be kind of a disservice to those 4 types of player base that we have, right? We have those that really enjoy the fact that our tier 1s are very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I think tier 1 moving forward, like we've kind of made the internal decision that tier 1 moving forward will be story mode. Mm-hmm. I can admit freely that tier 1 right now for the raid is overtuned. The final fight probably should be easier with the way that it's currently built out. Tier 2 is where tier 1 probably should be, because it's the training wheel session that is really getting you on board for the tier 3. Tier 3 probably needs a few more tweaks just in the overall timing and just the kind of the damage the DPS checks we kind of have built in it, because I don't think that, and again, I really want to give it about 2-3 more weeks with players going through it so we can get a real accurate understanding of how long it takes for players to get through that final fight. Some of the streams that I'm watching, I'm like, how have you not figured out this one aspect of this yet, that you just don't need to be doing this until much later stages? And I'm still watching players bang their heads against like this one thing that I'm like, it's a red herring. I made it a red herring on purpose. Please stop chasing the red herring. But yeah, no, I mean, overall, I feel like, the tier system as it exists with the 5 different tiers of things is just kind of an unwritten rule that we've created and painted ourselves into. Like I said, we make decisions in the past that influence our future. And because of that, there are some things that we have to just kind of maintain. And this just seems to be one of those systems that we need to maintain until we can find a way to until we can actually get to a point where it will be easier to back off of it and move things down to a point where players have another tier that they can actually shoot at to be like that elite of the elite.
Okay. I think that's pretty fair.
Well, and Ish, you're right. You can't just hold them forever, but you don't have to take them down every time that he comes up, right? No, that is the big red herring. It's just that you don't have to. I'm seeing some streams where folks are just trying to tear down every single thing that's inside of the space every time the head comes up. And if you're quick about the way that you're doing some aspects of it, you don't have to worry about that until like every other phase.
Dang, out here giving the tricks away.
I'm giving some secrets away.
Yeah,
come on,
man.
Well, this stream is for that, right? That's what you do, but you usually are doing it so that they can actually see you in the process of doing it.
Yep, that's the idea anyway. So, all right, along the same lines of new content, let's go to something that hasn't quite come out yet. But what can we expect to see with the Catacombs content pack that's coming?
Okay, how can I trying to think of like the right way to express this?
Ooh.
We're kind of taking a new approach to some things in this.
Okay.
Now,
are you going for a single here? Are you a double? Are you swinging for the fences here? This is new.
No. This is kind of a return to, I don't want to say the past, but it's kind of a return to something that we know worked for us before.
Okay.
Are any of you familiar with Bingo Boffin?
Yes.
Okay. So Bingo's storyline and the way that it actually was released over time was fairly well received. The cadence was probably a little longer than it should have been. But we are now in Umbar proper, and there are a good set of characters that you know, at least in a tertiary way, right? You haven't actually really had the opportunity to meet them. So we are exploring the way that, and if you haven't done the latest chapter of the Songs of Waves and Wind, and you haven't done the raid, block your ears, or just put a spoiler warning up here. We're going to be following the remaining kindred in the next few updates.
Okay.
But what we're looking at doing is we're actually looking at kind of parsing out some of the experience and the content over a period of time, rather than giving it to you all at once. So that there's a good cadence to it, and there's a good reason to keep coming back, and there's a good tempo, right? We don't want to just throw everything out there and have it consumed in a day or two. We want to give you enough, but we want to leave some other tastes that are there. So we're kind of looking at this and saying, it's not that we're doing a full ballad of Bingo Boffin, but we're looking at doing something that kind of meters out how we're actually delivering or exposing the content out as we move along. So that's kind of the different thing that we're doing there. But we've got a lot of quests that are going in. It's going to be a pretty large quest expansion, or quest content for this. And we're actually hoping to get the first bull roar test out there. What is it now? The second? So hopefully in about 2 weeks we'll be able to start seeing some of the stuff that's going in.
Okay.
We want to start getting the testing out early. We want to actually get more feedback on it so we can make some of the adjustments that are necessary. But it's a very large area that we're actually adding to the game for the area of Umbar.
Okay.
Marble.
All right. I like the way that sounds. Kind of along the same lines of content and whatnot, and things that are coming this month. Obviously is a certain time of the year that happens every year for you guys. 17th anniversary.
Yeah, it's almost old enough to vote.
Yeah, is there anything that you are particularly excited for with it, and maybe throw out one of your more fond memories of years past with the game?
So there's really nothing that's coming out with the anniversary for 17 that I'm super duper involved in.
Okay.
Just to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a very basic understanding of what we're doing. We did not get enough time to revamp everything that we wanted to revamp, or to revise and update a bunch of the stuff that we wanted to. But I know there's new rewards. I know there's new stuff that's going to be out there. Looking back on the game, I can just say, wow, it's 17. That's crazy. Like, most games don't make it that far, right?
No, for sure.
So we're in pretty rarefied air at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's not many of us that are left. Like, of the original 3, really only EverQuest is the one that's still running. And if you want to go back even further, right, you're looking at UO, and even Meridian 59, which some of us, I'm old, just so everyone understands that, like, knowing what Meridian 59 is, knowing what a mush or a mud are, it's crazy when you think about it. And when we were originally building the game and we originally put this out, I remember as we were doing the run up to the release, and I remember I mean, I could tell great stories from the past, but I remember when we actually started to work on what at the time was still Middle Earth Online. And back then I was doing voiceover and stuff for the company because we didn't really have anybody that did anything like that. So I did a whole bunch of voiceover for like all of the promo cuts that we did.
Okay.
So if you find any of those and you hear the hobbits that are saying things like, "No, I hear Lobelia Sagville Baggins snores in his sleep," that's me. Like I did that, and I did like a dwarf. I had tons of weird voices, and I just remember that they took that to a trade show, and I remember like seeing it and being like, "Wow, this is the first modern game that I'm working on." Because at that point, I was working on Asheron's Call.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just very, very strange seeing that and knowing that we had this grandiose idea that it started off with a card-based combat game where you didn't know what skills you were going to be getting and you had to build your hand in real time as one of our initial paper to digital conversions. And then we moved that to this system where you could be good or evil, and that would slide up and slide down. And like, game design is weird. You come up with a ton of ideas and you keep throwing them at the wall until one sticks. And what we ended up with was this really fun experience. And I think if I was just looking at one memory, it was when I actually sat down with one of my really good friends outside of work, who happened to be the lead designer on LOTRO at the time. Istvan, I don't know if anybody remembers him, but Cardell was the lead, and it was the monster play discussion when he was like, "I just want this to be coin op," and I said, "Dude, you're flashing, you're crazy. We're not doing that. We need to do advancement, and there needs to be persistence, because otherwise, it's going to just thud. Nothing will come of it. No one will want to play it." And we had 8 weeks. And in 8 weeks, we got the rudimentary pieces of it. And in 9 weeks, we finished it. And as soon as we were done with it, I got shunted off and had to build Weathertop. And then we started to see, like, after we launched and Monster Play got out there, I was amazed because it was popular. And we didn't have a plan for it being popular. We had a plan for it being there, and people, might want to go in and experience. But suddenly there was a whole group of players who were like, "I'm only ever going to play a monster.
Yeah.
You need to support me." And I was like, "Shit, what do I do?" So that was kind of like the thing was like, for the next 3 years, people would laugh because I actually created my own little home on Monster Play Island where I actually had to continue maintaining this almost by my lonesome because it ended up being popular. And anyone who's ever played Dark Age of Camelot knows where I stole a lot of, not stole, but where I borrowed a lot of the ideas, right? Because a lot of that was based around there. Because it was a game that I loved. I have way too many 11 and 15 characters on Deox servers on every single realm, so.
Well, you got the experience there. You got the experience there, that's for sure.
Yeah. I didn't really have much of a life in the early 2000s, so, I played a lot of games, made games.
Yeah, neither did I, now that I think about it.
So good to reminisce.
Absolutely. So I kind of wish this other question was first, but well, I'll get back to PvMP here in a second.
Oh, that's fine. You can go out of order. It's okay. Oh no, it's right. You get it all queued up.
Yeah. And actually, it looks like this is let's see.
This is classes.
Yeah. So I can kind of condense this down a little bit. Just what do you got cooking? What's the big ticket items that you're looking to accomplish? And this is really referring to what we put out in what you put out in the roadmap. So what are we looking at this year for classes?
So I wish that I had the Charlie Day meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia right now. Oh, you see how it's all connected? So yeah, we've got we've got the whiteboard. Last year I really wanted to do Hunter, I really wanted to do Guardian, I really wanted to do I really wanted to get back around it and revisit Champion. The reason that I wanted to tackle Hunter is because Hunter just feels very samey in every single one of its incarnations, right? I do DPS. It's like the gym guy. I pick things up and put them down, right? It's like it's just one of those things where, okay, it's great, and then you've got this whole just appendix of a skill trait line with the traps that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
I really wanted to get in there and do that. Guardian was just in worse shape. And Guardian was in worse shape not because the class was terrible or like just horribly unfun to play. It just had a lot of really bad performance issues. I'm not sure whether or not Guardian players actually recognize that the rotation that was built, there's a rotation now, one. There wasn't really a rotation, and this is not a shot at Bastin. He knows that. We've had discussions on this before. The rotation wasn't really there, and part of the problem with a lot of LOTRO class mechanics from the past is that the design team that worked on it didn't want to make something that was more nepotistic from other games, or maybe that's kind of the wrong terminology, but they didn't want to feel too close to what other games were. So a lot of the classes just kind of had experiences or moment-to-moment gameplay that feels a bit disjointed. Guardian was definitely like that. I wanted to build an actual rotation in that actually made the decisions that you have to make in the moment-to-moment matter. I think I did that. I don't know. The feedback on Guardian was, I would say, if I'm giving myself a Metacritic there, it was above 85, so that's pretty good, right? No, I'm giving myself that Metacritic. I'm sure that anyone who's watching this now is going to rip me to shreds and be like, no, it sucked, you were horrible. But, I think that it actually it was a pretty good revision. Did I want to go back and do the exact kind of thing that I did with Minstrel when I did it years ago? Yeah, I would have loved to have done weekly dialogue with the players to explain why I was making this decision. What are these things that I was doing? And I wanted to do the same thing with Hunter. The way that things are shaking out, I'm not going to be able to do a lot of the class work this year just because I'm stretching myself between a lot of the content side and the system side. And then I'm throwing myself into some of the producer work and the preparation for the future and whatnot on top of all of that. So I have to be very careful with how much I take on. That doesn't mean I'm not doing some pretty fun and funky stuff. It just means that I'm not going to be able to focus on a lot of that. So we do have a whiteboard, and that whiteboard does have classes on it. And the three classes right now that are vying for the majority of the time are... Did you get that?
Yeah, I got it.
It's Hunter, it's Runekeeper, and it's Loremaster are the three that are the ones we really want to look at the most. I'm still trying to fight for Champion to get in there, and we're advocating for Burglar to get in there too. We'd love to do all five. We can't do complete revamps on all of them because we're just not going to have the resources to do that, and we know that. So it'll probably end up being two, and the two that are probably the most likely at this point would be the ones that are actually causing more of the performance issues, or that the majority of players are engaged with. So Hunter is definitely on the list because Hunter is very samey, and it really does have kind of a deadline that we need to address. So in the interest of not swinging for the fences all the time, there'll probably be more targeted changes rather than the full breadth changes that we did last time. And I think part of that is because we learned some things over the course of the last year. While On-MM is a machine, he's still one person, and he's not going to be able to do all of it. And because I know that I'm not going to be able to step in and just take a class completely, it's going to be a little bit more. It's going to have to be a little more nuanced and a little more targeted the way that we make changes, so that
Sure.
they feel different, but they aren't completely transformative. we'll nudge them in the directions that we want to get them to, and then we'll try to keep moving things along. Now, like, one of the things that I can say with the reason that we're trying to build out this year the way that we are, and to move it into the method that we're actually planning to do development as we move forward, is, and I know it's good to have goals, right? That's what we're doing. We're setting our goals. What we're trying to do is get to the point that when we release this year's expansion, we give ourselves the runway to build up to a release that happens very early in 2025.
Okay.
So that we don't have this dearth of anything between the release of the expansion and something new, right? And kind of the goal there is to allow players and us to concentrate on the things that we really want to get done. So the work that we do for classes may not be as broad as we want in the I shouldn't say as broad as players want in the Q3 timeline, but it will be like the groundwork that's necessary. It'll be the single that we need to hit, or the bump that we need to get on base, so that we can actually start the further expansion, the further extension of those things as we move forward. Because we do have to make classes. I mean, I said this at the beginning, right? When we look at the game and we look at how it was developed and we look at the things that we would really like to change, we don't want to do any harm to the moment-to-moment gameplay for the casual player base that spends their time, just hanging out and living on the landscape. So we don't want to ruin that questing experience. We don't want to do anything to do harm to that. But what we really want to do is also make it so that those who are looking for a month-to-month meta, or maybe not a month-to-month, but maybe a quarterly meta or a yearly meta, whatever it is, something that they can make the changes and we can make further tweaks. We want to go wider, right? We want to give more options with more limited choices, so that you can get more things, but you have to determine how to best use those to accentuate what you're actually trying to do. And a lot of that can be built into systems that we currently have, whether that's through the ally system, whether that's through a careful restructuring of the way that we have our trees, maybe taking a look at trees all over again, and maybe we kind of backstep a little from there to maybe look at things that they were in the past. But we're not throwing everything out and saying, yeah, we're not doing any changes. We're going to do changes. They're just going to be targeted. They're going to be stepping stones for us to get where we need to be in the future. That's basically what we're looking at. One of the things that we actually did start to discuss is, forever we've had the ability for players to remove corruptions from monsters. Maybe not forever, but for a long time we've had corruption removed.
I mean, it's been since Moria, so it's been a long time.
But what we have started to realize is that there's a nice little toggle to that we could not toggle, a nice little opposition to that we could put in, and we don't really do it right now, and that's dispelling player buffs, right? We don't have anything for that flip side. And this was something that we all started to realize, because, to be honest and frank, when I started to come up with the ideas for the raid and the arena primarily, I was like, how can we present players with what it's like to actually face off against another person? Our AI system is absolutely fantastic. I wish that our AI system matched our pathing system. Unfortunately, it doesn't, so there's some weirdness and disconnect that happens there, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But the way that our AI works is we actually have the ability to really kind of make it robust. And one of the things that I think we did pretty well is presenting not an exact mirror, but a little closer to what it is to face off against another player through our AI set. So what we're kind of looking at now is, do we actually start opening up the option for, I think what we kind of bandied about the name for it is boons right now, as being things that, just gonna throw it out there. Maybe monster players can start removing some of those things from players when you're out in the Eden Moors, so that the buff and debuff actually gives you some play counterplay, because that's one of the big knocks against monster play, is that as a monster player you don't have anything that you can really do against a player who's fully buffed up. So we're kind of looking at that and saying, are there things that we can do to make some of our fights more engaging, to make things a little more interesting? So those are things that we're actually looking at as ways that we can kind of enhance the the class system and just the different character play and how it actually builds out inside of the game itself.
Okay. All right. Well, there's some things you're alluding to there that I'm kind of picking up on. So, all right. So we're kind of get away from some of the content stuff a little bit, and because I kind of want to make sure, because systems are so wide in this game, that there's something for a little
deep,
bit of
not
everybody.
Wide, deep.
Yeah.
Very linear, not very horizontal.
Right. There you go. So this is also something that is in the roadmap for the year. Hobbies. Any hints on what that next one's going to be? Anything you want to say about that?
There you go. There's a hint.
All right. Okay.
I don't have a book. I mean, I've got a book handy. It's not. I have my LOTRO books up there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ooh, yeah. Mm-hmm. There's actually a few that we're looking at.
Okay.
There are two that are in the front. So there's two that are in the front right now. We haven't made a final decision on what they will be. The implementation, we have to be, again, like I'm going to continue echoing on and on, is that we have to be cautious in the implementation so that it is very easy for us to maintain and build out and build upon the system as we move forward. And part of that is, do we just put this into the Umbar region to start with? And does that feel good enough? And as soon as we have that discussion, and somebody says, oh yeah, that would work. It probably wouldn't work, right? Because not everybody's at endgame.
Right.
And if we analyze our data sets and we actually look at where players are and what they're actually doing and where they're spending the majority of their time, where are they? Are they at endgame? Are they at the 150, or are most of them in the 1 to 60 experience? And what is the sweet spot for this kind of thing? So you have to say, no, it can't just go at endgame. It probably has to be something that can be retrofit all the way back to the early parts of the game. And how do you do that? So we have to be smart about that and make the right choices. So a lot of it just comes down to, is the system extensible and easily updated and upgraded? So yeah, that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
There are two that we are currently looking at.
All right, then. One's a little bit more obvious, I suppose, then. Yeah, probably. So you've mentioned this a few times, that is it fair to say that PvMP is your baby? Or a passion project, more so.
And as misshapen as it is, yes. It is. Like, anybody who's gone through the Forcer event knows that I'm a stubborn bastard. Again, like I'm okay with accepting my losses here, right? Monster Play was never supposed to be the success that it ended up being. And when we sat down probably a year to a year and a half after game launch, and we saw that, we had more than I think it was close to 8 to 10% of our player base was engaged with PvMP. That was fascinating, that large of a cohort of the game would be engaged in just this really slim portion of it. And we I don't want to say we did it dirty, but we did kind of do it dirty by not really paying super attention to it because we just didn't. It was never going to be the full-on game because we didn't have the ability to do that because the license didn't allow for us to let them free on landscape and do the things that we wanted to, and it still doesn't, and it never will, right? Lord of the Rings is about the triumph of good over evil, and evil has no will of its own. It can only do evil things because that's what Orion was about. So yeah, it's my baby, and the question is, yeah, the Q3's got something on the roadmap. So the first bull roarer, coming up for U40, we'll actually have. I just actually checked in fixes to Siege, so that we're gonna put it back out there, turn it back on, see how that goes.
Okay.
See if the changes that we've made are acceptable, if they function the way that we expect them to, and bring them back on. Turn it back on and see how it goes. Do I expect that that's going to be, oh, this is the magic bullet that fixes everything? Hell no, that's not the magic magic bullet that fixes everything. I don't want to promise anything, because when you're putting something big into the game, there's always a possibility that it won't happen.
Sure.
Right? So let's just say that it involves skills and skins and something along those lines. And I alluded to the opportunity for monster players to be able to rip buffs off of players, so there's probably some kind of a debuff aspect to it. There's something brewing. There's something that I've got on my personal machine that is about probably a third of the way done. And if everything goes well, by the time that we get to June, you'll be able to start playing it.
Okay.
Snoop it, there's going to be things that are in there really for the folks that really dig into the data and data mine everything. You'll be able to see the hints and tidbits of it. Remember, I really like Daok, right? So there was one class in Daok that I really enjoyed when it first came out. So I'm kind of looking at that as an analog for something that I'm working on.
Okay.
But other things that are definitely in the works are out there are, Anna and I were talking about it today. We've got some work to do with getting things back to a balance point. Balance is really hard between the two of them because they don't move on the same axes.
Right. Yeah.
Because a monster player isn't a real player, they don't have the same axes and switch points that we can actually do.
Creeps, you guys aren't real players. I love it. Absolutely bodied out here.
So it's like because they were built on a completely different vector and they don't have the same advancement path and the progressions are a little bit different, they actually operate much closer to a monster does. So when we make a change over here and we don't compensate for it over here, there's usually some period of disparity, and the disparity at 150 was really bad. So we need to make some adjustments there to fix it, and we're working on that. There's definitely more work to do there. The other thing that we're looking at is Audacity. Is it really needed? I hate it, but at the same time, because of the bonuses and benefits that a player can get from the gear sets that are out and available, the sets specifically, not just the gear, right? But the set bonuses that are available, it makes things even harder for us to really balance against, because the way that you could do sets for monster players is very different. But that doesn't mean that we aren't going to continue to strive for that. So we're looking at that, and we're going to try to continue working and massaging that over time. I'm hoping to get some changes into 40, and I'm hoping that when we get to 41, that there'll be something bigger. Something that we haven't done in... I have to check my notes real quick, because it's been a while, and I want to make sure that I give a date that gets things a little bit closer.
Okay.
Trying to remember. God, this was so long ago. I know that it was Jalessa that did it, but like I said, ages and ages ago. I don't remember the exact date.
Just ballpark
But
it then.
let's just say a long time ago in a dev house far, far away, you know, monster players got something new. We'll leave it at that for now.
All right. Who do I have to pay and how much so I can get some battlegrounds and arenas?
Yeah. Make the player base grow. That's kind of the problem. They're actually so the funny thing is that I have a prototype that is tied to the PvP game that we were kind of developing alongside LOTRO right around the same time that we were working on Mounted Combat. Mm-hmm. There's irony for you. Where we actually had a working, functional battleground system.
I think I've actually seen screenshots from very old data mining.
It was fun, man. It was fun. Like, we would play with the QA team during our lunches, and you know when something is working when as soon as you finish it, you all get together and you start talking about what you just did.
Yeah.
And we had that. Like, we had that. And we were like, it's lightning in a bottle. We captured it. Like, this was around the time that Smite was getting huge, right? So we were all playing Smite, and then we go in and play our game, and we were like, wow, like, we actually have a MOBA built in our game, and it's actually kind of fun, and it's interesting, and it's cool, and we're enjoying it. And you know, it got canned, and it was sad, but we had it. The thing is that the pieces never got blown up. So a lot of it still exists inside of the game and is hidden.
So I don't know if this will come through on camera for, but was it this?
Is that? Well, that might be it. I don't know if that was set in Moria or not. There were two that were actually built.
Yeah. Because let's see.
Has it something? There were two. There were two that were built.
Yep. First team to 300 points wins, or team with the most points at the end of each match wins.
Yep.
Score points. Let's see. Defeat opposing player. Hold the artifact. Little points. Hold the artifact at a point multiplier. Lots of points.
Yep. That was it.
Do it.
It was muckle. It was basically just muckle. We built a muckle experience in there, and it was working. And you know, there were some changes that happened with it. But I when I was poking around when I got back, I saw that the arena's still there. So I tried to retrofit it and make it work. The issue is, and it's sad, we had to build an entirely admin-based system to get the monster players that we built specifically for that into the experience, because, and this is partially why I haven't moved forward on doing a lot of the doing like the mission structure for monster players, because I can't move a monster player through the same teleport system that we do a player right now. So that's tech that it has been requested. It's weighed like every other piece of tech that we request. What's the benefit, right? And the benefit right now doesn't seem like it would be all that great. So there are, again, baby steps that have to be taken. You know, you build the structure and see how well it goes. If the work that I'm doing for Q3 is successful, then maybe we get a little more traction there.
Okay.
The problem that exists with building a battleground for LOTRO is really a problem of the size of the player base that actually engages in monster play, and the inability for us to actually take all the servers and merge them together for the monster play experience, right? So if we were able to take all of the different servers and migrate everybody onto a specific monster play server where they would actually fight against one another, that might actually make more sense. we probably have enough players to actually populate that. The issue is that if you look at, say, an Arkenstone or an Evernight, where there is a higher population of monster players that are constantly engaged, or just players in PvP that are engaged, it would be possible to remove 24 people at a time and put them in 12 on 12, or 6 on, like maybe 12 people and do a 6 on 6, which is what the actual experience is built for right now, is a 6v6. Whether or not it would take too many people away from the fight, from the main fight, it is something that we wouldn't really know until we actually get into testing on it. And again, if you take that kind of a swing and you miss, not so good, right? Because if it's just my time that's going into it, and I'm doing it on my lunch breaks and on weekends when, you know, I need to get away from the kids or whatever, you know, then maybe, you know, it's worth it. But because there would probably be some pretty hefty engineering involved in it, do we want to take that engineering time away from, I don't know, focusing on a way to mitigate some of the lag spikes that we have? And the answer there would be no. We'd rather focus on the thing that affects the majority of the player base. That doesn't mean that I haven't looked at Osgiliath and tried to figure out whether or not we could do a rotating map set where sometimes it's like an Osgiliath and then other times it's the Ettenmoors that we're doing, but where we have to balance that. We have to weigh that against everything and determine whether or not it actually makes a lot of sense. Right now, it doesn't. But the things that I want to do is a return to short cycle gameplay out there with meaningful rewards and benefits. Boy, that just sounds like a lot of like nonsense, right? Oh, he's talking about giving you rewards, but it's true. Like the players are driven by what they can earn from the experiences that they have.
You have to incentivize certain things.
Something.
Right.
So what I would love to do is build in short cycle reward sets for, you know, things like capture the flag, where I should be able to easily do something like that between old new orc camp. Wait, that's the wrong way to say it. Old new orc camp and old new elf camp, because those still exist as structures. I didn't blow them up, and they're close enough that I can probably put a restriction effect on like how you can move through there, and then turn that into its own little encapsulated experience. The other thing that I know players have been asking for a long time is the arena aspect of things, right? Where you basically go in and you just fight against one another. Mm-hmm. I'd love to be able to formalize that. It's just me finding the time to actually build that out and then test it properly to make sure that it's working. The whole reason that we pulled it down last year was because we looked at, no, Sarah Oakhart will never be sped up if she would be slower, and I'm going to forcibly have you escort her somewhere else in the game because of it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I would love to be able to get. I would love to be able to get the time. You know, again, I'd love to be able to manufacture time. If I could manufacture time, I would do a ton of things.
Oh yeah.
But that would, like, I would love to be able to actually give everyone a true like arena experience where you could do 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s, and then have some kind of a reward set that was built around that. And to be honest, the reward pieces of that are very difficult, because without some way to transfer some of the rewards that you get on the monster side back to the player side, what's the incentive for the monster player, right? We can only go so far with the limited the limited knobs that we have right now, and those things are, you know, the cosmetic aspect of things. Right now, did we fall on a treasure trove of things that we could potentially do with the cosmetic systems? Yeah, right. I mean, we can now change a whole bunch of different VFX. Like if we wanted to, I don't know, build everything out so that you had different VFX than anyone else. Yeah, we can do that. Like I have that capacity. A lot of that is because I taught myself how to do it inside of the game world. When I got back, I was like, oh, this is not as hard as I thought it was going to be. But I'm going to exhaust that. And when I do, now I need to go back to art and get more. So again, the tension and balance points that exist. It's really the incentivization on the monster side is harder than the incentivization on the player side, because the player side, we've already identified in this conversation some of the things that are pain points for players, right? LIs, they're going to continue to be a stressor for players because they want to get gold traceries as fast as they possibly can, and they know they're going to have to upgrade those as things continue to advance. You're always going to want more virtue experience. You're always going to want X. You're always going to want Y. So the incentivizing the player side is easier, I think, than incentivizing the monster side. And until we actually put something in that incentivizes, that the monster side is more incentivized to do, it makes things difficult. I'm still trying to figure out if my push to make the monster side free was good or bad, right? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because it means that more players can actually engage in it.
Right.
But it's not. It seems like you're never going to curb people's bad behavior, and there's a lot of bad actors that like to jump into things.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we stray off topic for just a minute and address some of the things about what's going on right now on Bullroar?
That is totally your call.
Well, no, I mean it's your stream. I feel like I've hijacked the whole thing by just talking because I like to talk.
Hey, that's why I wanted to have you on. Like get an opportunity to just kind of like have very specific things, and if you see something in chat that you want to tackle, go for it.
Yeah. So right now we are testing something on Bullroar, and this actually is tech that I requested when I came back. Ages ago, in the dark ages of LOTRO, when we were very early on, the Edenmores, because of the popularity, had to be shunted off onto its own server. Because it was just crushing everything else that was going on. So we actually had to put it on its own physical server that would kind of be dedicated to it. And somewhere along the way, the methodology to do that was lost to tribal knowledge, right? So the torch just never was passed, fell on the ground, and we kept moving, and it was just like the Dark Crystal where the mystic looks at his hand and goes, ow, my hand, and that was it, right? Like, we don't know like what happened to that information. It turns out that it's good that I requested this tech to come back, because in the background, it's been worked on for the past 2 years, and we just got it.
Okay.
And one of the things, obviously, that we've been doing, because our number one issue that we continuously see from the player base is latency, lag issues, the difficulty that some servers will have. And, I requested players to give me a ton of reports on where they were seeing the lag, the servers that they were on at the time. And we started to compare those notes against the things that were going on the servers, and we started to see patterns. And those patterns eventually led to, hey, we should really invest in this tech that Alan requested, because we think this might be something that we can use to solve an issue that we have. So what we're testing now on Bullroar, and what we'll be continuing to test as we continue the drive toward U40, is what we're calling server pinning, which is basically setting some areas of the game to always be on a subsection of servers that handles that and only that, and nobody ever gets migrated to those, because these are the areas that are actually more non-conformant or have some issues associated with them that we have seen time and again. And the Edenmores is one of those, and it turns out that there's another big offender, and of course it was called out in the post that we put up today, and that's pre-Midsummer Ministerial, where there's just always heavy load there. And because of that, we will be making sure that those servers, I don't want to say sequestered, because that's really the wrong way to put it, and I'm not going to be as technical as I should be, so I'll just say pinning, right, because that's what we're calling it. Moving those off so that they can functionally hold those servers for the players who are actually involved in those at any given time, alleviating some of the load that's actually being transferred back and forth from those who are not on those servers. So they won't ever migrate to them. So they won't ever have to share those resources.
Okay.
And that is one of the first big steps that we're actually taking towards addressing this, because this is something that we were able to identify over time, and now we can address it with the tech that we actually got. So we're excited, because we're excited and we're hopeful, right? Because this is something that we've been looking at for some time, and it's something that I wanted to talk about for months. because we know we're having it. We know we're working on it, and now it's actually here. And we're still working on other things. The 64-bit servers are still being worked on. That's all stuff that is getting ready to go into testing. That's all stuff that we're getting ready to actually start spinning up and getting out there and validating and seeing whether or not these things will alleviate some of it. Recently, we've put together a pretty strong strike team, and we've identified a couple of other issues that we didn't realize we had until we started to peel back different layers and we started to get new reports that were actually showing these things happening more and more frequently. And then we identified it and we were like, damn, this stuff is bad, but it was so deep inside of the experience that you didn't see it until you started to rip away the different layers that were hiding it. So there are some things that we are doing just as a team and strike teams that we're starting to identify. And if you're wondering what that means, it means that it sounds like I have found a way to manufacture time. No, I have not found a way to manufacture time. It's just that I'm split in so many different directions and in so many different things that I'm starting to get bits and pieces from all the different teams, and I'm seeing like how we can assemble this into the bigger puzzle that helps to fix as much as we possibly can.
Awesome.
And Seb is probably going to have my head tomorrow because I'm giving a lot of this stuff out. But it's important, I think, that we start communicating, the positives that we're actually working toward, because it is stuff that we've been talking about and saying, we're getting there, and we are getting much closer. I can't give you an exact timeline because we still have to test things. We still have to go through the steps, right, and validate that these things are happening. And it seems like every time we get really close, something like a switch dies on you, and it just kind of makes you sad for a while, right? So we're getting
soon.
closer. Yeah, exactly. But what we've done, now is this pinning tech is a first step.
Okay.
Hopefully this alleviates some of it, and we can start getting some of the good experience from it. So when we go into the first round of bull roar testing, hopefully the week of the 15th, we're hoping that when we turn siege on, we can get a lot of monster players in. We can spread people out over the game world and really stress the servers, right? So we'll be reaching out to members of the community who are on Discord sites or streamers and everything, and just issue the challenge, bring the server down, right? We want to see like what can actually happen. We want to get the data and the feedback to validate that these changes are working, so on and so forth.
All right.
So yeah, that was
no, that's great.
Tangent. It was a tangent, but it actually had a reason for bringing that tangent up, right?
Oh, I like that. It sounds. I like the way that stuff sounds. It makes me think of just how you assign IP addresses for hardware and machines so you can map. Just nothing gets that address, so I know it's always there. Like that's what immediately comes to mind when you're talking about that. So
that's a good analog to how it goes. It's a little different, obviously, but yes, that's a very good way to look at it.
Yeah, just good old DHCP reservations. Okay, so we'll do something a little bit more fun. And also, if we're at any point long on time, please just let me know.
That's going to be up to you because I'm a night owl. Like I don't usually go to bed until at least 1 o'clock Eastern. So
hey, I stream till 2 or 3 in the morning. So
there you go. So if I'm up till 2, I'm up till 2. I'll still be at work at 8.
All right. Hey, I'm the same way.
I'll still be up at 6.
All right, so let's do the next one because I know a lot of people have talked about this over the years. There's been some very large forum posts over it, and that's with the kinship updates. That is also something that was listed on the roadmap. And what can you tell us about that?
I want to go big.
You just want to do the whole Galahad post, right? You just want to do the whole thing.
You say that, and yeah. I do.
I mean, honestly, if you did 50% of that, that's incredible. I know. So long term, the Galahad post is
I don't want to say it's the ideal, but it definitely moves toward what the ideal would be. Right? So if I'm being 100% forthright, I want the kinship system to be super robust and something that you want to be part of the kinship. Right? And the reason that you join kinships is because you make online friends. Like some of the best friends that I have in the world are friends that I've known for years, but some of them are also those people that I actually met while playing games that I'm still in contact with.
Yep.
I never would have become a game designer if I hadn't kind of fallen into the alpha for Asheron's Call back in the day and met a whole bunch of really cool people, and kind of just ended up in the right group. I really want to go big. I submitted a really large spec. I think that the spec is somewhere around 44 pages long. It's massive. Like it's a lot. There's a lot. There's no way we're going to be able to do all of that. Not at first. There are other things that we're working on that will dovetail nicely into it.
Okay.
And like I said before, there are stepping stones that we have to do. Now, I could go through the whole litany of things that I really want to do. My big pain points are the kinship system right now is, to me, transient because time is a terrible way to level up a kinship. It doesn't show any true investment in the kinship itself. It doesn't show anything that, the kin has actually done and accomplished.
Right.
So right from that, you can infer that I would love to build an entire questing system around the kinship itself and have the kinship have short-term, medium-term, long-term, and epic goals that they actually want to achieve and rewards that actually bring in with those. No, there's not a ton of pictures in there. There are some images that are embedded just so you can see what I'm trying to convey. But I also wanted to build, I also want to build in a reason for being part of that kinship. So there are benefits and buffs and things that you can provide to the entire kinship over time by earning them, right? So there would be a reason for kinships with some kind of an advancement that enables the kinship to empower themselves, individuals, and the kinship as a whole. That is the pie in the sky, long-term goal. The achievable thing that we're looking at now is a slimmed-down version of that, that builds and gives us the ability to actually start putting in those pieces as we move along. Everyone on the team agrees that we need to do something with our kinships because they're like the lifeblood of an MMO. So we want to be cautious about the way that we start this off. We want to make sure that we hit some of the really good points. The things I can tell you we aren't going to be able to do is like a true calendar that we maintain.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird, but calendars are really hard to build into games. Some folks are able to do it better than others, maybe because they have an army of developers who are just focused on the calendar portion of it. But the calendar would be one of the really hard things to do. But getting a way to actually get your kinship out there for recruiting, that's something we might be able to pull off in the short term, right? Being able to give you a little more control over aspects of the kinship, making it so that you can't exploit our servers by doing things with your kinship, is the lowest piece of hanging fruit that we have, right? So that's something that we're looking at too. So there are small pieces that we're looking at to address in the short term, and then we have a medium set of things, and then we have a longer term set of things. If there's one thing that I'm really going to start pushing on, it would be heraldry for the kinship, if we can find a way to make that happen in the near term, because I think it's just sad that we don't have heraldry for your kinship, being able to make your own like color scheme and heraldry that you actually would want. Like, every game should be able to do that. So I'm hoping that's actually something I can push through as the lowest piece of hanging fruit for the kin restructure. And there are other aspects of this too. I think we all really want to swing for the fences on this one, and that's kind of like, if we're gonna swing for the fences on something, this is probably the right one to swing for the fences on. But it's still kind of scary because it would be a big investment.
Yeah.
And would probably have to push something else off the table in order to accommodate. So we have to figure out exactly where the balance is, where the median is, and everything just kind of works out. But yeah, it's robust. And someday, like when we get to the point where it's all coming together, maybe we'll just go through the spec and we can show you, like, this is what we proposed back in X year, and we're finally here.
Yeah.
We'll see. Like, as we get closer to it and we know exactly what's going in, we'll talk about it more. For now, I'm being very vague.
Yep, that's okay.
Giving super high level.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the idea, though. It's just like, what are you looking at? What's kind of the guiding light here, and what's kind of like the goal? So
yeah, Gallia Health Post is a good guideline.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's like when I read it, I was like, this is really well thought out. It fits really well. It doesn't go far enough in some aspects, because like there are things that I look, if you haven't recognized this about me, I kind of like when players have friendly competitions with one another in some capacity. I like PvP, but I don't like stabbing a hobbit and having two hobbits stab each other. But wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could have a cook-off against another kinship? Or if you could have like a scavenger hunt against another kinship and work these things out and maybe even track it in the game world? What if Bree was like, hey, we want some sponsorship, or we want to sponsor a kinship kind of a thing? Like, these are the ideas that we have that are like the longer term bits that would be kind of cool. So that's like one of the things that we look at. And I see that question about account-wide virtues. There are a lot of things that we about internally. And again, a lot of it is the stepping stones that we have to build in order to be able to accommodate a lot of those things. To accommodate a lot of the systems that we would really like to see, there are other pieces that need to be built along the way. And it's all about starting to do that and make it more palatable for players and for us as developers and designers to not kind of ram something through that is detrimental to the game on the whole. And some of that is the careful balance that we have to continue to make money, or we can't keep making the game. And it sounds terrible when I say it, right? But it's true. Like, there are ways that we need to be able to keep the game moving forward. So we do need to maintain something for revenue streams.
Right.
And we need to be able to balance those things out and not deep six other things while we're doing it. So we're just going to be careful. Excuse me.
All good. So this will be kind of in regards to, well, by the way, that I mean the whole kinship thing, like I said, I know it's been talked about for a very long time, and it's actually been in some previous producer letters and things like that we're going to do this update and whatnot. And it's always been a critique from the community is, if it's in a producer's letter or a roadmap, it's a promise. And it's like, it's not, it's what you want to do. It's a goal. And, anybody who's been around longer running games knows that, like, yeah, things, I think you may have even said it before. It's like, there are things that you come across where it's like, oh man, this is going to be really difficult. And that turns out to be the easy thing to do. And then this thing is like, oh, this will be easy. I'll get this knocked out in an hour or a couple weeks or something. And then it's, 6 months or something like that. So, so I know things get pushed, and kinships have, it's bided its time. We'll just say that it's ready.
It is, and it's necessary.
Yeah. Because you bring up a very valid point with it. Like, what's the reason to be in one? And like, well, right now there isn't really one. It's a fancy friends list, you know,
Yep.
like that's all it is. It's a group that you play together with. But on that, as far as like, you know, we've talked a lot about content, which is kind of funny because you used to do content a lot and you're kind of going back to content and you do systems.
I'm doing both now. And so it isn't official yet, but the rumor is that I'll be doing both.
Okay.
I'll be sitting over both and looking at them both moving forward.
You just be the lead.
Pretty much, yeah. Is pretty much what we're looking at, is that I'll be the lead, and then, you know, there'll be even more reason to yell and scream at me. So that's totally fine.
Yeah, or you do like PvP, so now it's
There
just
you go, right?
professional versus player.
Bring it.
All right, so let's talk about something that's fourth quarter. Let's talk about the expansion. Now we don't get too into the weeds on this because obviously there's a long time in between there. But it was mentioned that it actually would not contain a level cap increase.
Right.
It's just kind of curious what the thought process is with that, because that's it seems more of something that would be like just a content update rather than what we would associate with an expansion pack.
Yeah. So there were a couple of things. The response to the roadmap this year was interesting, and I think part of this was because, and I just realized how badly I'm smacking my lips. I apologize. I think it's because it was so close to the release of 38, and it still felt a little bit unfinished because we didn't have the instances out. And it kind of smacked of like, oh, you know, why are they doing this? They haven't finished this other thing. But the idea is that we've operated on this notion of small expansion, large expansion for several years now.
Mm-hmm.
Before the Shadow was a small expansion, and then, you know, Umbar was a larger expansion. The cadence on that is that you never really had a small expansion, right? It was slated as being a small expansion, but it always ended up ballooning into, well, this is still more than 300 quests, which is at least 3 times of a normal content pack.
Yeah.
You know, it expanded somewhere between 300 to 500 quests, whatever it was. You know, as we got closer to the release on it, it was, oh, we need to have this many of this type of content and this many of this type of systems, and so on and so forth. And you know, it's not like the team was expanding by any means. We were still getting smaller and contracting, so we needed to identify, like, is there a way that we can maintain a release cadence that makes sense and put out big enough releases that can be looked at as full expansions, you know, to both the story and what's available for players, and at the same time deliver what that expectation is without the full-on systems with, you know, a new race or a class or a complete revision to a system. And we can point to WoW and be like, you know, every time that WoW has an expansion, you know, their 2-year cadence is that after those 2 years they completely revise their entire skill trees, and it's like a brand new game every time. Well, the reason it's like a brand new game every time is they're like 40 times the size that we are, which is, you know, it's crazy. Like, we're never going to be able to do that kind of a thing unless, you know, the super secret thing that I'm working on is a huge hit, and then all of a sudden, you know, people are coming to us in droves, and then that's a terrible problem to be in because now we have to maintain that. But that's neither here nor there. So we kind of sat back and we said, what do we need to do in order to put a true expansion out? And the notion is that there has to be enough content that it's not something that is consumed right away. There needs to be a proper loot incentive or advancement structure that's built inside of that to warrant this being called an expansion. There probably needs to be some kind of a systemic aspect to it that is different and new enough that there's a reason for players to want to actually move toward this. So the reasoning behind that is we want to start relying more, like, this is a weird way to say it, but we want to start relying more upon the content and addressing the long-term systems that we need to address. And that's kind of where we're going with this expansion. It's not necessarily going to be indicative of what we do for every expansion. It's more of the, like, this is our attempt at realigning and reestablishing what it means for us to have an expansion.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that there won't be new systems that are introduced with it. It doesn't mean that there won't be new things that are interesting and engaging. There just may not be a class. There may not be, a race or something that's associated with that. Kinships is not really a selling point that you want to throw into an expansion, because it really should just be part of your game. But one thing that we're banding about is we've got 150 levels.
Yeah.
And when a new player comes into our game and they see that climb, and I'm sure that anyone who's on this stream right now has been in this situation where they're like, hey, Bob, I really want you to come and play this game with me. I've been playing it for years. I think you'd enjoy it too. Come into the game and I'll help you out. And so, Bob hops into the game with you and you're like, oh, right, I have to roll a new character in order to be able to play with you, in order to not be able to make all of the things that you're going to go through incredibly trivial.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
You're not actually going to experience this, right? And, I know that Bob, deep down, wants to escort Sarah Oakhart for the 84 minutes that she walks through that instance. And I know that you want to see the look on Bob's face when he throws his hands in the air and goes, will this NPC ever reach their goal? Right? So, like, what we're looking at is, how do we make that better for existing players, for potentially new players, and how do we properly incentivize that without making it exploitable, because y'all are bastards who like to exploit everything at every opportunity you can. So, like, what we really want to do is find a way to make that viable, right? To make it so that we can actually incentivize everything properly, put safeguards in place, and make it that if you want to play with friends, you can play with friends. You can bring people in. You can go through those experiences again, and there's something for you there. So that's my big hint as to, like, kind of where we're leaning right now for the expansion and what we're looking at. And along those lines, there are plenty of places that we can actually make those adjustments and also effectively improve just the general QOL for all the players in the game, right? Because if we incentivize this correctly, and part of it is that you look at, the fact that you, as a higher level player, are always looking for virtue experience or LIs that you can consistently get, or whatever those things are. If you actually had a valid way to do so, and you were helping somebody else out at the same time, is that something that is interesting to you or to the players in general? And that's kind of one of the things that we're exploring right now.
Okay. I think that is gonna get the speculation mill in full tilt.
Oh yeah, that's kind of the goal, though, right?
Yeah.
I told you I was gonna drop some juicy tidbits for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. All right.
Oh, no, come on. I'm totally not redescribing, but well, maybe it was. I wasn't here for big battles, so maybe that's kind of what it is, but that's not really what this is supposed to be. Like, we recognize that there are It's a daunting task when you log back into the game. Look, when I came back, I played a character from 1 to 150, well, to 140 at that time, but it was crazy, like the amount of time I had to do that, and it was nuts. It was nuts. I didn't cheat to do it. I didn't Valar up. Not on the first character. I did on the later character, but it was crazy, right? And it's just a huge time investment. And as we all get older, that time, just like I said, we can't manufacture time. So it becomes harder and harder for people with lives to be able to really engage in those things. So we want to make it more rewarding for those people who are trying to get their friends engaged, and then make it better for those who are joining, and make the experience better for them. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot that we still have to bandy about and like come up with the true like solutions to all of these problems. But there are a couple of hills that we're all willing to die on, and that might be one of them.
That's fair. That is fair. All right, so we're gonna kind of round out kind of like a 2024 type of thing here, and that's really just going to be, what are you most excited for this year in 2024 for the game? Can he even say?
What am I most excited for? For 2024 to be over? No.
Buddy, it's only April.
It's been a long 3 months.
It is.
There's really so much that I'm looking forward to. So, it's gonna sound weird, right? But having put together the actual plan for how this year is supposed to go, if we get to 75%, if I hit 75%, I'm gonna feel amazing at the end of the year. Like, with everything that can possibly go wrong, getting that much done would be fantastic. So really, like, being able to get to the retro at the end of the year and say like, how well did we do? What goals did we meet? What goals did we fail on? Did we overpromise? Did we underpromise? Did we underdeliver? Did we overdeliver? That'd be great. Like, from a professional standpoint, like, being able to say, like, I now have a measurement of what it takes to develop X much content, this many quests, this many instances and raids, this many new systemic pieces. Being able to identify all of that would be fantastic for me personally. But what am I most excited for? Probably to have the players see. Oh, man, that's tough. So, like, if we really do get the level stuff that we're kind of looking at to a point where we can actually really start diving into it, I think that would be a big win for us. I think for the things that I'm directly involved in, I think if we can identify and correct some of the big latency issues that we have, that would be huge.
Yeah.
I think that's probably our biggest barrier to entry for the game. Because, it's frustrating. I play, and it's frustrating when I lag. I don't like it. And we've got some pretty good leads, and we've got some pretty good notions on how we can address some of these things, and I think it's going to help us. That said, there's a lot of old stuff, and we need to kind of revise some of the way that we've done implementation from the past, because it hasn't been done with a more cautious eye on, like, exactly what is going on in a different. I have to be careful the way I say these things, how things are constructed, how the pieces are actually put together. Are we forming them into one entity rather than 62? I don't know. That might be a case that we've seen. Things like that, where there are clear-cut ways that we can address some of the issues that we're seeing. and then continue to peel back these weird layers of the onion that we just keep uncovering and going, oh, there's a weevil there. That's terrible. We should probably get that weevil out because you don't want that in the food. It's been a really eye-opening like experience in the past few months when we've actually been able to identify some of these things and prepare, the solutions and identify what we can do to mitigate some of it. But I'm also going to say that I'm really looking forward to the summer.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to the summer. Summer, for those of you who don't make games, for those of you who take your summers and leave us in the dust while you go off to wonderful places like Hawaii or Europe or wherever you go and leave us, and say, I'll be back in September when the kids are back in school or when I'm no longer on vacation. Summer is a really rough time for, specifically MMOs, because that's usually when we see a bigger drop off and players aren't really playing as much. So I'm hoping that some of the mitigation that I'm trying to put in, or that we're trying to put in, some of it is just my own, again, stubbornness, actually yields like what we're looking for. And then look, the monster play stuff, I'm not gonna lie, like I've had this on my mind for 10 years.
Yeah.
Longer than that, like this is something I've wanted to do for that long. And I almost get to do it. Like it's a third of the way done. And I started some of it a while back. It's just it takes a long time, especially when like I said before, like you got to be cautious about these things. I would love to just take the big swing and throw it out there and say, hey, you and I are going to completely not do anything else but this one thing. But if this fails, we're...
Oh, no. Oh, no.
So instead, we take our time, we
go.
bide our time, we do the things right so that we don't end up in that kind of situation.
It was actually pretty funny because...
Word by filter, that's terrible.
I just lost you for a second right as you did that. And it's like, if it fails, and you just went off for a go.
That's great. Perfect timing. Thank you.
There's Sevs behind you, like pulling the plug out.
It's probably my wife. She's somewhere nearby. No, like 2024 is going to be interesting. 2023 ended pretty well. Umbar, Corsairs of Umbar was a lot of fun to work on. We had some missteps, we had some challenges that really kind of presented themselves to us, and we made it through. Like we're still here. You asked earlier, do I think that 39? What are players thinking about it? I think they're enjoying it. I hope they're enjoying it. Are you enjoying it? You can be honest.
Parts of it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what would you do to improve? Like, what is missing in your mind? Like, this is totally fair. Like, yeah. I've got a player right here. Yeah. I can get the direct feedback. Let's do it.
Sure. Well, if I could have it my way, I honestly just wouldn't have 3-mans anymore. The comp situation, I think it. Honestly, from my view into you guys, is it causes too many issues from trying to balance classes in certain ways that wouldn't otherwise be necessary. I think 3-mans can be utilized in a leveling space. Like it's a fun way to break up the questing, kind of like school and library were during Moria.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there.
Those were mine.
Were they?
Yeah.
All right. Well, still used to this day. I mean.
Yeah, I know. No, you're not wrong. How about I say this? The plan going forward, the plan for 40 right now. Sorry, not for 40. For 42 for the expansion, is to cut back on the 3-mans because we kind of agree.
Okay.
Right. The cost benefit right? The cost of making a 3-man and the cost of making a 6-man, and the value that you get from those two, specifically for the itemization that goes into them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't put a lot of the top end itemization into the 3-man because the experience can't be as difficult as the 6-man, because you don't expect to have the Holy Trilogy, because like you just said, the comp isn't going to be there, right? So we're looking at that, and I don't want to give everything away, but if you've been following the trend since I rejoined the team, I like old school. I am old school. Like, part of what we're looking at is, what were the fundamentals that made LOTRO interesting and fun at the start? Like, what were the things that actually, engrossed the player, and what were kind of the big moments that kind of kept you wanting to go to the next place?
I mean, I can walk you through mine, even, because I'm a Shadows of Angmar player. I've been through all of it. So
humor me for a minute.
Yeah.
Was it that there was an encapsulated story in each area that culminated in a big event that allowed you to go through and say, I've now learned this entire experience, and this is how it ties back into the overall story of the world? Was that any part of it?
I thought that was cool. Yes.
Okay.
But I think for me personally, I'm a fan of this IP. So that probably mattered more to me than maybe other players, because they just want to have group content or whatever the case is. I really enjoyed, like, I will always still say that the Rift is the bar for raids, because multi-boss, there's even the way the loot was distributed back then versus personal loot. Not really a fan of personal loot, but I understand, and like the reason why. So I'll just say that. But multi-boss raids, I think that's what kept me playing, was the multi-boss raids, because it wasn't something I could just sit down and knock it out in 20 minutes. It's like, okay, we got to commit. We got to figure it out. And even if we figured it out, we're still going to screw it up. Or you'll get an unlucky baleful roar and the group wipes. Or, somebody didn't hit the right wheel in the Everseer room, and now we're all locked in and we're just going to die. And then we got our walk of shame. So like I don't know, that there was something very intoxicating about, for me personally, Shadows of Angmar and Mines of Moria. I think the way that group content was handled was just chef's kiss. I think it was just wonderful. I mean, we had open world stuff like Bogbarith. Was that you two? See, okay, all right. So just
no. So look, I'm not trying to look. We were still a small team back then too. So the chances are about 1 in 3 that I did one of the things you're talking about.
Yeah.
I didn't do the Rift.
Okay.
So that's not me. But
did you do Karn Doom?
I did not do Karn Doom. I did the Witch King's Retreat.
Okay. All right.
So I forget what we actually called that. No, I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, the one with the Rogmol, where you actually had the 3 different locations and the stabs that you had to use, that was me.
Oh, Barad Gularon.
Barad Gularon, thank you.
Yeah, Barad Gularon was awesome.
That was the thing that the pieces of the past that we're trying to return to, the things that we're trying to re-inject into the game at this point, what we're planning is kind of a return to the encapsulated stories of the zones with the capstone moments. We recognize completely that there's a contingent of players who prefer to learn those stories on their own, but we also know that there's a real big contingent of players who want to make sure that they can group with others when it's called for. Maybe in the U40 release, there's an entire area that's been built out specifically for group play. Maybe, right? We haven't done that on landscape in a long time. You know,
Yeah, I
and,
think what was the last one was like either Tarlang's Crown or Langruven or something like that. And
maybe we dipped our toe in that water when we put in Bellinsel, right? Maybe when we wanted to see whether or not that would be something that there would be an appetite for. But again, we have to be. We can't just make everything fellowship based, right?
yeah,
We can't just be like, oh, well now the game's gone back to being super hard on landscape, because that's part of like what the appeal of the game is that, and it's part of the reason that the difficulty system was actually moved over to the live service, right? Because we know that there is a contingent that's really looking for that. But the things that some of the things that we're looking at is, yeah, maybe there is an entire group wing that'll be available with the U40 update. Maybe there's some different mechanic that's in there that you're gonna have to figure out. Maybe there's some enemies in there that act a little differently that you're not used to, that you're gonna have to relearn and be like, oh, this group is really kind of scary because they do these weird things, and we're gonna have to relearn how to pick them apart on landscape that you haven't had to do in a while, right?
Right.
I'm kind of old school when it comes to that. There's some things that I really like about that group-based play. There's some things that I like about some of the areas being difficult. You mentioned multi-boss raids, right? Would I have loved to make Mark de Corbo into 12 bosses? Sure. Would I do it the way that we actually built it out now? No. Would I ever go back and do another Gwath? No. So there are some practices that we got into, practices and habits that the teams have gotten into over the years that are neither good nor bad. They just kind of were, and when you start to pull them apart, you're like, oh, there are some things that are good and some things that are bad, and it's keeping the good, excising the bad, and bringing in the stuff that kind of made the game unique in the beginning.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've talked about internally for raids is breaking them back out into, lack of a better analogy, the Rift scenario, where there were effectively wings.
Yeah.
Right, to the raid, where you did the arena part, you did the Drake section, and then there was a third section, right? I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been so long. But there were like 3 different sections that were distinct inside of the Rift, and we kind of want to make a return to that.
No, you could use like Thorog would be, or like the Helligrod's a good example, because you have the Drake wing, you have the giant wing, you have the spider wing, you have the and then you have
exactly.
Thorog.
Exactly. Like that's kind of where we want to go back to, is because it enables us as designers to focus a little more on getting the ambiance and the actual difficulty pieces of that, so that they're unique and they're not samey, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of what we're looking at in the future, is kind of pulling back to a little bit of our core, the old core, and kind of freshening it up for the future. There's so many other things that we talk about all the time too, like going back through and refreshing some of the old content that is still really good, but because it was never given the level scaling treatment, it just kind of flounders and falls flat now, right? So it's we got lofty goals. We're a scrappy little team that's trying to do, I don't want to say the impossible, but we're trying to do the improbable.
Yeah, I think so. Like as far as content goes, like I think generally you guys hit the mark pretty well on group based. I think, like I said, just if you're gonna invest in a space like a 3-man versus a 6-man, like looking at the way that the Umbar ones were done, and look, I know that there were issues with that, with team fluctuation, so like
all in the past.
Yep. Either way, when you look at it, and you'd even mentioned that like streets is by far the easiest, and it is, and then you go in, but you don't get anything. Even doing like 3, 4, and 5, like not getting a set piece when that looks like an easy thing to do when you release 3 instances. Okay, like we're gonna get 2 from here, 2 from here, 2 from here, or if you wanted to even take it, you get 1 from this one, 1 from this one, and then the 6th man is what offers more because it's more challenging, more time, and things like that. I think that's what makes it a little weird for me, looking at what I want to play and what I want to do and what I want to invest time in as a player. I look at, okay, the reason I want to do streets T1 through T5 is the deed. That's realistically it right now. When the rare crafting material that comes out of it is a little bit too rare. It's like, is it worth the time investment? Because you guys look at that from the development. Is it worth it, your time to invest in that to build it? Then I have to look at it on the player side of saying, is it worth my time to run this thing at this difficulty and then not get a drop? So, that's something I have to balance with life and all that stuff. So I look at it right now, like my biggest bang for the buck is running Isle. And specifically tier 3, because when you step up to 4 and 5, it changes the loot table. So, it just seems like as you climb higher and higher, I don't know why the loot table's changing. It should just increase rates and the things that are in the pool. But that's how I look at it, just as someone who's played this game for a very long time. So
yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on, and it's funny because Anna and I were talking today about that. I'm not like super jazzed with how we ended up with the itemization 439. I don't know how much opportunity we're going to have to go back and like really readjust it for 40 and 41. But there are some things that need to be addressed and changed for future implementations, because we need to do a better job of identifying where and how the different pieces are acquired. And then we need to actually set aside, like, this is always where the best in slot drops for this. And then, identify exactly how those things are going to be given out. I mean, like, there are pieces that continuously come up. When I say pieces, there are discussion points that players have that constantly come up amongst the dev team. And these discussions are not easy to have.
Sure.
Like loot locks. As a player, I hate them. And I understand why you hate them, because you hate them for the same reason that I hate them. If I want to play this 40 times, why the hell are you trying to disincentivize me from playing it 40 times? If I'm enjoying it, or if I'm trying to get something, let me try to get it, right? At the same time, as a developer, I look at it and I go, well, it's great that they want to play this 40 times, but they're going to get bored. I know they're going to get bored. Or they're going to put so much time into it that, that it's no longer like interesting, and, all the little things are going to come out, and it's like, it's weird, right?
Yeah.
So we have these conversations, and like it's a really real conversation of, what if we just got rid of locks? Like, I know this is a conversation that's going on because I'm watching it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, is this something we can change and not effectively like hurt the core experience? Like, does it actually is this something that goes against the general gameplay loop, or is this something that actually enhances the core gameplay loop, right? And it depends on who you talk to on the dev team or in the wild as to whether or not it's beneficial or harmful.
Well, here, let me offer this up, because and again, this is just one player's perspective.
Oh no, it's not just your perspective. I guarantee it.
I'm just saying, this is this is my platform and I get to use it how I want, right? So some of the fondest memories I have in this game are sitting there and specifically Moria. Moria, like I said, was just, I loved it. That was like some of the best times I've ever had in a game was in Moria. And because it was Friday nights, we got our, okay, what piece do you need? All right, we're running stairs. Let's go. And we're just doing it. And we're having fun because we're talking. And like, it's not necessarily always specifically about the content. It's about, I'm going to help this person get their stuff. And if I have to run this 10 times tonight, I'm doing it. We're getting you your piece tonight so you can help us in the raid. Or, you know, and then, so we were just doing that. And then we started cycling tunes. And then people are learning different mechanics and different ways of doing things. And it wasn't always about like, you have to hit it out of the park with the content, but like the way locks are specifically now prevent that entire experience. Because you can't do it unless, I don't want to play multiple characters anymore. I just don't. I don't have the time with the way the game is designed. I loved it back then because it was a lot easier to manage all of the classes and get them raid ready or whatever the case. Now, no shot. I'm not doing it. You know, it's hard enough even just trying to do the 3 specs of my current class and make them very viable, you know, and because each one of them requires their own legendaries, each one of them requires their own gear, their own virtues, like their own builds, and we don't have a way to manage builds, so we got to remember everything or take screenshots or all this stuff. So let alone doing that for, what do we have, 12 13 classes now? Like there's just no shot. So and I think me being able to help other people, because then I lose the incentive as someone playing one class. Okay, my 4 locks are done. Later, dudes. Like, yeah. So it that's what takes the fun out of it for me, because I can't sit down on a night and just grind out a bunch of stuff. It's, well, I've done my 4 for the week now, or the day, or whatever the case is, and you know, that's where I'm at.
It's a completely valid point, and you know, it's a, like I said, it's a discussion that we have internally a lot. And you know, the 2 camps, there are reasons why each camp has its belief, and neither one is really wrong.
Yeah,
right. The reasons behind it, neither one is really wrong. It comes down to, I think, something I said earlier, right? If you change too much too quickly, does it end up hurting everything in the long run, right? Yes, the players are right, because the customer is always right. You're not wrong, but you're also not 100% right. So it's that weird balance point, which is, you know, we're always talking about how we can start to alleviate some of this, and what are some of the minor changes that we can make to keep the incentive there without blowing all of that up. And also, how do we start to change, or how do we start to enlighten the other positions that some may have, that if we make this change completely, it would have a negative impact on things. You know, so it's a dance, right? It's a very, I mean, it's like politics in a way. It's you have to make sure that all the constituents are happy so that you can continue to get elected to your post, right? So you have to be just a little careful about how you go about these things. If if I'm being honest, I would prefer to just do away with them.
Yeah.
You know, I think that they are more detrimental than they are helpful at this point. But
oh God, Benny's comment.
Because there is a but, right? And so that means that the way to fix this falls to me. So I have to spin up some spare cycles somewhere to figure out how to fix that and provide an incentive for you as the players that doesn't make it so that you no longer are incentivized to play the content, right?
Yeah.
Which sounds weird, because what you just said was, I'm going to play the content to help other people, right?
Yeah.
And then the counter argument is always going to be, but once they're all set, then what happens? And it's like, okay, so all right, we can keep playing what if over and over and over again of, well, what if this happens and what if this happens? At some point, one of us is going to end up being wrong. So how do we fix that point where things are wrong? What are the levers that we have inside of the game that enable us to actually provide better incentivization without too much cost, that enables us to make everyone happy? And that's where I'm at as a designer now, is trying to figure out exactly how to do that, right? And again, we're talking about a small section of the game, right?
Sure.
Because not everybody is at that end game point. You know, there are plenty of folks who aren't, right? So when I look at the long-term goal, right, and what I'm really trying to look toward for the future, tying those players and those tying the people that want to live in Middle Earth to the group over here that wants to play at the high end or at the end game, or however you want to describe it, like the more achiever based player, and then the people who just want to live in the world. How do you tie those folks together? How do you get them to overlap their loop and create the Venn diagram that you need to create to incentivize both of those sides and have them feeding each other?
Sure.
That's where I'm at right now, is how do I marry those two things together? And if I can get that right, and I can give that first nugget to the team, and they can tell me I'm crazy, and then they can tell me, do this instead, and then we can start beating that idea into submission, that's when I think we can fix.
Yeah.
It's not even fix. It's come up with that notion that separates the game completely.
I think what's interesting about all this is, like, if part of the view is potentially like, well, what if they get bored because they've run it so many times? Can I just offer up sword halls and work pens into the equation?
I know they're constantly run. I mean, you can even say school and library, right?
Yeah.
Like, those things are run ad nauseum to this day.
Yep. And it's like, because and why is it done? It's to help players level up.
Yes.
And, you know, it's a very fast way to do it. And so I think that is the control in this whole experiment here, is that is what is used for. And if it is, the incentive is there you go.
Yeah. And again, like, things that I've alluded to, right, are a return to the helpful nature of the elder player to the newer player or to the lower player. There are things that we are looking at and saying, these are things that make sense, and these are things that we kind of want to return to. I mean, we're cognizant and you know, introspective enough to know that we are not perfect, and that there are things that we can grow on and change, and we want to, and we're going to continue to, you know, try to make the changes that are positive. It's a slower process than I think some of us would really like to see, because I you're not wrong. Like, sword halls is consistent in being run, like
all day, every day.
Ward pens, consistent. All of those things are run because they are good ways to show people how to play their characters, good ways to get the experience that's necessary to move up for that type of player. Then you've got the tortoise people who, you know, get the Stone of the Tortoise and just sit there. And we still need to find ways to incentivize them too. We don't do a great job at either right now, and that's what we need to kind of. I shouldn't say we don't do a great job. We don't do a fantastic job or a most stellar job at both of those right now, and we're trying to balance it and spin a lot of plates. So it's a task, and it's something that we're continuing to work toward, and something that we're actually looking at and saying, how can we make these adjustments and not disincentivize people from playing. I like you. I think that the incentive is there to play no matter what. So again, I fall down on that side of like, hey, I think we should, maybe turn this off and see what happens. And, then there's the other folks that are just like, no, we want to stay the course, don't really change much, see if, make little minute changes and see whether or not this actually pans out the way that you expect them to. So we just got to be cautious, and it's not the best answer, and I apologize that it's not the best answer. It's just the reality.
Yeah, that's what you got, though, So I'm gonna throw out a question here. This actually wasn't on the list, so I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble here.
That's okay. If I answer it, I'm the one that gets in trouble, not you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw this one out for old Benny, because we were talking about legendaries the other night, and specifically two-handed weapons and the issue that they pose for classes that use them.
Yes, they do.
And really just the fact that the previous versions of two-handers had base stats on them to compensate for not having your offhand. Now they don't, so you just lose all that. And there's nowhere that you can make that up in, because there's no other item that you can put in there that gives you the additional essence slots or the additional stats. Or so as a two-handed, and I use a two-hander, and I think he mains his guard uses a two-hander all the time, and you just lose those stats. So I think that's a interesting problem for specifically that. So what do you think about something like that, just right off the top?
Yeah, we should probably fix that. So to be fair, the revision of the LI system is LIs are much maligned, and the reason that they're much maligned is because it was legitimately just another really grindy system that was added on. And you've hit the point. You hit the point a few times in this conversation, right? The difficulty in leveling up a character or in creating alts, and the reason that a lot of players don't really focus on that is simply because the amount of time that you have to put into a character in order to make that character effective in the areas that you want to play, if you are an end-game player. And again, we do have to quantify things like that because it's true, right? But if you want to put the time and effort into that, it is an inordinate amount of time, right? And it's not just, well, if I get my rare traceries, I'm good enough. Are you though? Right? Are you really? No, you're not. Like you're just not. Like you're not at the point now where you're truly contributing the way that you need to be able to contribute if you're going to be a big end game focused player.
Mm-hmm.
So that's incumbent upon us to come up with the solutions for that. And I think one of the things that we talk about this too. Like Vastin and I were talking about just like last week with On, that we really want the time to go back and start to build out a more complete set of traceries that would make sense in things like this, right? There are some hurdles that we have from a technical standpoint where we would have to, we would have to get new slots for the different weapons, so that if you were to say have a two-handed weapon we'd probably have to make it so that a slot would be different, so it can actually get a new type of essence, or sorry, a new type of tracery that would be put inside of it, that would give you both like the benefits of statistics and a modifier, and then come up with better trait sets that are actually on the LIs, and multiple ways to contribute to a trait set. There are lots of different ways that we could tackle this. It's when do we have the opportunity to go back and revisit it that doesn't conflict with other demands on our time. And that's what we're trying to now free up for us and for the players. And I know this is like a really horrible way to say it, but like that's kind of why we've shifted to the cycle that we are. Because if we can get on the cycle of delivery that we're trying to, it gives us more time immediately following our expansion releases to revisit the things that we know need to be adjusted, right? And there's always going to be demand from players and from executives or whatever you want to call everybody that's involved in the creation of this stuff, that there needs to be something new and shiny. And if it's not new and shiny, then it probably doesn't have as much value overall. But when you say that, you also have to be cognitive of the fact that, well, we've created a bunch of systems and sets that are systems and items that are actually evergreen because we want to keep those things fresh and available and consistently updated. Like the LI system really should be expanded on, and we want to do that. It's a matter of finding the time to actually go back through and address things like this. So you're not wrong. Like, you're losing statistics by using a two-handed weapon, right? You don't get the benefits of the shield, and you don't get the benefits of the one-hander. So we do need to address that. It's when do we have the time to make those adjustments, and to then make sure that the other LI sets that exist get the same kind of treatment. And I mean, I guess the benefit that we have is because guards in particular are just like the weapon and the belt. So the trait sets that would exist there, the legendary item sets, tracery sets, whatever you want to call them, would cross over there. It's just that we need to get the time to make the adjustments, to expand the system in a way that makes sense, sandwiched in between all the other stuff that we have to do, with the understanding that eventually the progressions have to go up because we have to make new tiers of these things.
Right.
So it's like a constant moving field, a constant moving goalpost that we are chasing, and we need to factor in some time into our design processes to get that work done. So I mean, I guess, like, in a weird way, I'm saying have faith, we're gonna do that, because that's kind of what I'm saying, but it's not
Well, I gotcha.
like a fair statement to make, because it's like, well, you haven't done it yet. And it's like, yeah, we haven't, and we're working toward it. It's just there are other things that just keep cropping up. So yeah, the LI system is something that we are always looking at, trying to figure out how we can fix it. Like I said in the earlier parts of this conversation, right, that we know we're very linear in our progressions right now, and that there's not a lot of, like, we don't have flavor of the month meta, right? We don't have a bunch of stuff that that enables you to just play with something and suddenly discover, oh, if I link this skill with this trait and this trait, this brand new thing emerges. Or we don't have a lot of that emergent gameplay that we kind of had in the past. And Fitz, look, I see what you're saying. Like, I'm watching what you're doing in here, and it's totally fine. The LS system isn't going away anytime soon. We know that there are failings in it. We know that there are things we know that there are things we need to address, and we want to address them. It's a matter of getting the time necessary to do that. The LI reward track is one of the things that we also want to address. Like, it's there. It's not going to end up going away. But it also is serving a purpose that it wasn't really meant to serve. right? We've talked about it before that we want to transfer that to more of a true reward track rather than just a legendary item reward track, because we want to put the ways to get the legendary item pieces and traceries into the game in a more consistent manner, in a more like this is your real reward path, right? That would be ideal if we can get all of that go wide experience into the ally system and into the essence gear and into things like that, where maybe that's where we start to build our meta. So the idea moving forward is to identify where we can make those adjustments and then kind of fix that. It's kind of a long way to say that, yeah, you're not wrong that you're losing statistics and we need to figure out a way to actually do it. It's a matter of balancing that against all the other work that we have to do.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like,
long-winded way of saying
well,
it.
no, like the longer that the game goes on, the
more difficult it's going to become.
The pile gets larger, and there's more and more to sift through. So, because you, like you said, I mean, you have to balance, bringing out the new stuff to keep people engaged, but fixing the old stuff, or things that are broken to, make things playable. So yeah. But here we got one last question on here, and then we'll kind of wrap things up here. And this is something that I had actually sent you some stuff on previously. That was actually the currencies. I was very much in the camp, and I don't know if you actually got a chance to watch the video or not. Is I very firmly believe you guys already have the answer for currencies, and with a seasonal rotation going from embers to motes and figments or cosmetic and all that stuff, you could probably expand that to rep and things like that. I definitely think you probably are going to agree with this, but I think the currency system is just bloated beyond belief at this point. If anything, I would love to just be able to convert that stuff to something else and get it out of my wallet, because a lot of that stuff I'm just never going to use. If it's character bound and I don't have the right amount to go buy something, it's just going to sit there for an eternity. So if I had, even if it was 1-to-1 marks, I don't care. Just let me get rid of this stuff that's just making my footprint larger at this point, and for no reason. But I legitimately think that, like, the embers and moat system is pretty good. You're going to get that stuff from doing the content that you're going to want to do. Embers is always the level cap space. Moats is everything else. So if you want something older and you go do the older content, you're going to get the appropriate currency. You don't have to necessarily go do a very, very specific thing. You can, so I think you guys actually have the solution for that already. It's just a matter of converting,
consolidating, and providing syncs. Yeah. So I would love to get to a point where there is a regional currency that is used for each region, right? So that each region has its own currency, and that way we don't have, the 60 odd that we currently do. It's actually probably higher than that at this point, because it does bloat and it just sits there, right? It doesn't do anything. You just open it and you go, oh, yeah. It's not really hurting anything. It's not really doing anything bad, but it's there, and you're never going to do anything with it. You brought up skirmish marks. We didn't end up removing them from the instances, but we left them on the raid too, right? Because damn it, we were supposed to remove that. So, like, skirmishes are another discussion. Have me on again and we can talk about skirmishes. So you're not wrong about moats and embers. So moats and embers, we actually really like moats and embers. It's pretty solid. The problem that I have with moats and embers specifically is there are no viable evergreen sinks for moats and embers, right? There's no actual economy for them. It's you're going to cap your embers and you're going to cap your moats. And I would hazard a guess that if you are playing as consistently as you play, you're probably capped already on embers for Umbar. And you're probably not incentivized to spend it on anything because at this point you're going through the instances and getting gear that's commensurate or better than the gear that you can get from embers, right? So there needs to be a way to spend into that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Do we have ideas? Yes, we have ideas. Do we have the means to get those ideas into the game immediately? God, I wish we did, because damn, would it be cool to actually build a real economy around this and start to consolidate all of the different currencies to a point where we can actually build a true economy. It's yeah, like from your lips to God's ears, right? Because we know, we kind of know what we need to do. It's a matter of how do we convert a capped system without a true economy built around it into an economy overnight, right? Because the real answer is that embers and moats, the cost on the items that you can get with those go up. Right? Because the conversion point starts to happen, and now you can convert those lesser currencies up into the embers and moats, granted at a devaluation of the earlier ones, which is unfortunately with our VIP system, sometimes you end up with more from the barter currency. It's weird. But there are ways to actually kind of game that out to end up with more, unless we put in like the safeguards and fail-safes against that. So when we do that, how pissed off does the player base get when they see that all of their all of the costs on things went up significantly? Because they would have to go up significantly without something that actually says you're going to continue to get more of these, and these are the major way to exchange for a broad selection of items moving forward. Is there a notion for how we do that? My answer is yes. I've got the spec. I've put it to the team. We all agree that the idea is solid. It's a matter of getting the necessary pieces in place and then convincing everyone else that this is going to be a do no harm scenario, right? Because when you're trying to build an economy, just look at crypto, right? When you're trying to build an economy, you can really F it up. And we just can't like screw it up that badly. So we have to be very cautious about the way that we do it. And, you know, again, like it all comes back to what are the incentivization points? What are the things that we actually look at? And what are the ways that we can actually, you know, give you players what you want without shooting ourselves in the foot? You know, because we are still a business, and if we give away the whole shop, right through that system, we're screwed. So we have to be very cautious about it. And like I said, like the way that I look at it is, if I wanted to incentivize you as a player to be able to dive into a system and do the thing that you used to like to do, right? Which is play a myriad number of classes and characters, but not have to invest so much time that it felt like work.
Right.
And the way that I did that for you was you play your characters and you earn your currency, and your currency can then be used to unlock items for everyone that you have, you know, for every character that you have, and you can purchase and move those between everyone on your account. Like in a closed environment, that sounds pretty appealing, right? So there are pieces that we're looking at of how can we actually set this up, but it looks to me right now that, because you're right, we do have the Ember and Moat system, that if that cost is too restrictive, it runs the risk of being something that players won't engage in, or that they'll look at as too punitive. When what we're trying to do is make it so that this becomes an actual game economy, where when you do end game things, or you do capstone things for the areas that you're in, you're earning this currency for the future. That is then something that is viable for every character on your account world, or world account. So that might be one of our end goals, right? It's just, how do we get there without upsetting the apple cart? And it's hard. Like, it's hard because I feel like that's the answer. It's convincing everyone that we won't shoot ourselves in the foot to get there.
That is the tough part. I think that's
Right?
that you just described life, though. I mean, just
It's true. It's true.
you know.
It is.
And Lynn wants a pink Bjorning.
I see that, a pink Bjorning.
Just be able to dye that fur any color.
Great.
Hey,
Great.
there's a great source of income right there. Just people
It would be.
just painting their bears.
So there's a lot. I mean, it's not easy, and I know I'm talking in a lot of generalizations, and I'm not being as pointed as I would really love to be. But you know, I do have to be careful.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are discussions that we have. These are issues that we know exist. We play the game. Like, we don't turn a blind eye to it. Like, we just have to face the unfortunate, harsh realities that sometimes exist. And sometimes we put things out there and they end up just landing like a lead balloon. Right? Elrond's Tracery Box landed like a lead balloon. And it's probably because it was way, way, way out of where it should have been. You know, there are see, and the thing is that, like, that suddenly becomes a point of, well, that failed, so obviously there's no desire for it. And that may not be true. Right? It's one of those things where the perception can be that, well, that was a complete failure, so we'll never go down that track again. So again, we gotta make smaller. We gotta hit more singles. Stop swinging for the fences.
Yep. Gotta work yourself up to it, right?
Yep. And then one day you're gonna knock something out of the park, and you'll be like, "Well, I didn't expect that one to go out, but okay."
Yep. Well, hey, it's been a long chat.
I apologize.
No. I love doing this stuff. You know, if I could get my hands on more of the dev team, I would certainly do it. But I know not everybody wants to come on stream either, so I appreciate you taking your time, because it's been a good 2.5 hours almost. So
Yeah.
But I think dialogue goes a long way. You know, that's something that I've talked about a lot is, and this really doesn't relate to you a whole lot, but it's just leveraging people like myself to throw stuff out there like, hey, what do you guys think about this? Like, would you do, you know, we have 100 people in here right now. There's, you know, cord streams and stuff like that, as, you know, leverage those things and just see what people have an interest in. Because obviously as the players, I don't know what sets of data you guys have. I don't know what types of survey information you have, or, you know, all I can do is go off of conversations and chats and forums and all that kind of stuff and say, like, let's, you know, this is what I see, this is what I feel, this is what I would spend my money on. And there are definitely things that I would spend money on. A lot of it is has zero game impact. I would spend a lot more on what is it? I just saw it in chat too.
Cosmetics?
Yeah, the
Free my boy Fitz, Vendetta on top.
oh my gosh. Come on, what's the word, chat? Where are you guys at on this? Where are you guys at? They're on the website. They're not actually on the store.
Now I'm
Supporter packs. There we go.
Oh yeah. That's not. There are definitely more planned. I mean, that's not something that'll probably go away. The thing is that we know that the folks who are still playing the game love the game. They love what we do. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like we love making the game. I mean, if it's not clear that I love making this game, I don't know what I could do to make it more clear. Like I invested initially when I was here, I invested like 8 years of my life to this game. So now it's up to about a decade of my life has been focusing on this game in some way, shape, or form. And I've done pretty much any job on this game except for engineering at this point. And I have changed some code, which is dangerous. You shouldn't let me change your code. But I'm always trying to find something new, but sometimes something new isn't necessarily as good as revisiting the past and kind of taking a look at what made things work. Like if I could go back and reinstitute the Destiny system for Monster Play and actually make Destiny viable again, like that's what made that entire thing work. It was a loop. It was an enclosed circuit loop that was just perfect for what it did. And the fact that we nixed it when we went free to play always made me very sad. So, but we can't go back now. Like it's just not there, right? But we're always trying to fix things. And when we say, that we understand that the grind is real and that that we know that virtues and LI are friction points. They are intentionally friction points that we have not massaged to the point where they don't feel like chores. And that's what we need to get away from. Like nothing should feel like a chore when you're playing a game. So we still have work to do there. We'll continue to try to do work there and know that we're really trying to fight the good fight, right? So when you close this with the question about the currencies and you say we do have the answers, I don't...
Thank you, Orion, for all your work on this incredible game. We appreciate you.
I think that what we need to do as developers is make sure that when we express what we want to do to change those currencies, is prove how they don't do harm to the overall experience.
Right.
And that is our proverbial, cross to bear, the kind of thing. We have to figure out how to express that and maintain it, and prove that we won't hurt things in the long run. So it's tough. If I had my druthers, we'd go back to the Asheron's Call way of dropping weapons, which was you just keep going back into that pool over and over again. And then you want to make that weapon better, you're going to have a chance to blow it up.
Reavers are insane.
Right? You want to be the best, you got to risk it.
Yep. Oh, I'm all for that.
And if you roll the one, it's gone.
Lovely unique weapons, hate Lees.
But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Hopefully we can do this again sometime, and I didn't get you in too much trouble, so.
No, the only person who get me in trouble is me. And I'm good at that. I'm really good at that. And yeah, I think Drew had mentioned it. Drew has mentioned it. I'm actually, the court is out this week.
Yep.
I'm in. So I'll see all y'all, I guess, again on Friday. And I just said all y'all. I must be getting a little tired.
Yeah, you get the double dose this week. So, all right, man. Well, I'll let you get off of here. Have yourself a good rest of the night, and
You too.
real short turnaround to work.
That's not that bad.
Yeah.
This is normal.
Yep. All right. Well, I will let you
Thank
go,
you.
and have a good one.
Take
We'll see
care.
you. You too. All right, chat. Hope you guys all had fun and enjoyed that. I will post this up on YouTube after it renders and I can download it all. So I hope that was got you some information. I tried to get stuff for different areas of the game. So I got some, system stuff in there, got some of the legendary stuff in there, some of the roadmap stuff for content, got some of the anniversary stuff, some of the kinship stuff, all that good stuff. So like I said, hope you guys enjoyed. If you are not already following this channel, make sure you do so. Hit up the YouTube channel as well, because like I said, I will post it. Yeah, pink bears for the win. There you go. All right, that's going to do it for me for tonight, though. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you on Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Cool. All right, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.